We'll hope so. We'll aim for that. First question of the day. How's your research going so far? Let me ask it this way. How many of you feel pretty comfortable with your topic that you got? Okay. Who feels less than, like you're not really sure you might change, etc.? Some of you. Okay. Is there anybody who doesn't even have one really yet? All right. So hopefully as we go through today, maybe some things will get more clear, but definitely this next week you'll definitely want to make sure you have a topic. I mean, you're going to start finding markets for it, so that helps. But the earlier you start, the easier that will be to follow along. And were there any questions on any of the homework?
Do you have any examples of how to do a rhetorical critique on one chapter of a text book? Because I understood your video very clearly about an essay, an idea, right?
Yeah.
But since I've never read any of this before, I kept thinking like, well, since this is the first time I've heard it, it's hard to do a really good critique because what am I comparing it to? I don't really know. Is it good? Is it not? How do I know? I don't have anything to compare it to.
Okay, good question. So as far as the chapter reviews, chapter 1 and 2.
Well, if I saw an example, I think it would be helpful. That's all.
Yeah. We will do a lot of examples in practice today.
Okay.
So that'll help. But just so you know, the chapter reviews, what I really am interested in with that is that you read the chapters and then you think it through a little bit again as you do a review, and then you kind of practice whatever skills we've got coming up in class. So I'm not worried if you did a great job at that or not, but yeah, we'll go over plenty of examples. Another great thing about rhetorical analysis, which I guess I always thought it was obvious, but a semester or two, someone let me know it wasn't, is whatever your claim is about whether it was good or bad, guess whose opinion that is? Yeah, it's yours. It's your opinion. In fact, all claims, we're going to talk about claims today a lot too, and get you really good at those and making good arguments. All claims are opinions. Okay? Now, your opinions, hopefully they're backed up by some good facts, or some good reasoning, or some good experience, or a combination of all those. But it's okay to have an opinion. All you have to do is to be able to back up that opinion. So with that in mind, next time you're watching some so-called expert on the news or whatever, kind of watch him that way and realize, he's just saying his or her opinion. And hopefully they have a good, legitimate opinion. But I'd be interested to hear if you do that and it kind of changes your perspective. I would be interested to hear what that's like. So, any other questions before we roll on? Okay, last question before we discuss chapters 1 and 2 briefly is, how excited are you about writing your final paper? I mean, we barely started on it, I know, but yeah, awesome. Is everyone pretty much the same? How many of you are still dreading it? Kind of. Okay, so at least
I don't dread the research part of it. I just dread the writing.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And I'm completely the opposite. Like, I'm stoked to write.
Yeah.
You
I
write
don't
mine,
want to
I'll research
research.
yours.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you my number after we go. We'll all work this out.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
Actually, since you mentioned that, that reminds me, I haven't announced this yet, but if on the final paper, which means the synthesis and the final, if two of you want to work together and write one paper, you can.
Does it have to be double the amount?
No. It just has to be twice as good. No. Just do a good job. But normally when you're assigned group projects in college, do they work out really well?
No.
They suck really bad.
No.
One person does all the work.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not going to require that. But if you do work with someone, you've got someone where you're going to be bouncing ideas off of each other, you're going to be thinking it through, you'll probably learn more. It might be a little less work, at least, shared, and there's one less paper I have to grade. So,
Amen to that.
So anyway, if you want to do that, you can, but before you commit to that with somebody, make sure you get to know them, make sure they have a similar work ethic or better. All right, let's discuss chapter 1 and 2 briefly. Somebody sum up what's the main point of chapter 1, or one of the best points from it. Was there a point? I'm sure there was somewhere, yeah.
Let's rename the scientific method other inane things, and then let's try to enact it as just something separate.
Okay, so what did it rename it as?
Well, the first term, the something of mind,
Habits of mind.
yeah, habits of mind. Why did they just call it the scientific method? They followed all the same rules. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was like instead of using all the knowledge you learned in science up to this point, let's just make something new and pretend you've never seen it before.
You know, I'm not going to accuse Stuart and Linda of doing that a lot, but there's a class like English 3206, something like that. One of my neighbors is getting her. I'm not sure which degree she's getting, but she told me about this class, and she called it something about making up new terms. Just, it's like art, you know, people getting really edgy, trying to create something new. Why don't you just create something good?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess there's some value in all of it. But yeah, sometimes people do like to reinvent the wheel. Did anybody else get that? Or do you think that calling it habits of mind helped you apply it to yourself more than calling it the scientific method?
For me, the scientific method was a total turnoff. Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time I heard it, but it's bouncing back there somewhere. So reading chapter 1, it was more like, oh yeah, I remember this stuff now, and it was a refresher. And like I put in my analysis, I hated the practice this, read this, and do that. I'm like, dude, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
You've given me the steps. I would rather apply it to what I'm going to read for my final paper than waste time on the text in the book. So I think they did a really good job in outlining the steps for me to take to really learn to read with the purpose of responding to what I read to.
Yeah.
So that's what I got.
Good, good. So there's multiple valid opinions about things, just like we'll be discussing about claims or opinions tonight. How many of you did the little assignments in the chapter, like when it says, try this? Okay, totally not expected. I don't expect you to do that. In fact, when you totally get the point, you know, and then they go on for a few more pages about it, I will request, since you're getting points for it and stuff, I will request you read at least the first 2 sentences of each paragraph so that you know that you're not missing out on something. But the reading process, remember, when you find something that's not applicable to you, what do? The first time you read through it, something you print it out? You skim it, and then you say, this section doesn't apply to my research question. What do you do to that section?
Cross it out.
Cross it out. Right, don't waste your time. Your time is precious. Your brain cells are precious. So if you totally get it, you don't have to read the whole thing. But if you start treating this textbook that way, when it starts getting long-winded, you're going to skim so fast, you are going to miss some important points. So I hope you'll read at least the first little bit of that. And what else on chapter 1? Did it change the way you think about thinking at all?
I really like chapter 1 because a lot of the things I already do, I just didn't realize I was doing it.
Yeah.
As having inquiries.
Like with shopping comparison in that example.
And so I've always done it, but it was nice to have them put it into words, be like, oh,
Yeah.
I do that, you know, and then I was
Good.
able to relate to the text. And I didn't find it very boring at all. I thought it was really good.
Good. Who else did it change your awareness of thinking, at least, in some way, at all? Did it change your awareness of how you think 10% even? Seriously? Okay, who did it change your awareness of thinking less than 10%? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I'm going to ask this again. Please respond one or the other. How many of you it changed your awareness of thinking less than 10%? How many more than 20%? How many?
We
So
said
everyone
more
else
than
is between
20,
10 and
but-
20? Or you're not sure? All right, fine. Just wanted to make sure you're awake. Anything else on chapter 1? How about chapter 2? What was a useful theme from chapter 2?
If no one else wants to, I don't want
Okay,
to cut
go
you
ahead.
off. I really enjoy the examples in chapter 2. about the different styles of writing. And I kind of wrote this in my paper, but I loved the essay at the end.
Yeah.
It was so easy to read, and chapter 2 helped me realize where, if I was to become a writer in any field, that's really the direction I would go, because it was easy for me to understand.
Yeah.
It's the way I think. It's entertaining. I think it applies. Anyone could read this and enjoy it. Where it takes a very special person to read, like a biography or, something more detailed, analytical. I don't know if that's the right word, but.
A little more formal or dense or
Yeah.
dry or.
Yeah, and I just get lost on that, and then it's really just a waste. If you're reading something you're not understanding it, then why read it in the first place?
Yeah.
But I loved the essay. I loved just the way she wrote, and that was the best part of that chapter.
Good.
The very end example.
Who else read that example? That's what I realized. Some of you ordered your books 2-day express, whatever, still haven't come, whatever. So maybe that's why some of you aren't answering. So I won't call on any of you for opinions about chapter 8 yet. Do you guys like it? Those of you who read that? Pretty good.
I applied it, of course, to other things in life because I'm not experienced as much in English writing. So for me, I used it for whether you're watching the news or car salesman, you could use these same things like identifying purpose, audience claims, like what is it that people are bombarding you with? What is it they want from you,
Yeah.
right? A lot of times people don't do that. I think you could use those techniques in everyday life situations.
Yeah, excellent. How many of you have been trained as salespeople ever in the past? Isn't it amazing how much they know, how manipulative, but how subtle that
It's
is?
called positive manipulation.
Yeah.
What I call it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it can be
That's how
for a
they
good
sold
cause
it
and
to
stuff, so fine, whatever.
That's how I sold everybody.
But when you see it, when someone tries to sell you and they're really, really skilled, it doesn't make you, in order to it, like, you don't get drawn in because you know what they're doing and you're a little more free to make up your own mind without
You
their-
watch for it.
He's not
Yeah.
a salesman.
I mean, that.
Yeah. A good salesman's like, I can see what you're doing, but it makes me feel good. Where do I sign? Yeah, it's amazing how good they are, how much knowledge there is, like, wow. So,
Even when there's a language barrier there.
Yeah.
You can see the good salesman even if there's a language barrier.
Yeah. Yep, so being aware is good. And that rhetorical analysis stuff in the chapter, that's what we'll spend a lot of time talking about tonight, because that's our next paper coming up. And so we'll try to make it really clear. Do you remember the 2 skills I talked about that are, I don't know if I told you this, that are in the rhetorical analysis, but I think are so valuable. My students actually get excited about what they've learned in the paper.
Question, so I thought we were supposed to write a rhetorical analysis on the first chapter or second chapter.
Oh, good clarification.
That was the one that
Are you the one who
you-
sent me a message on Canvas
Yeah.
about that? Okay, good question. Yeah, so on the chapter, you read it, and then, so you do a little rhetorical analysis on each of
So
those
do you
chapters.
could you choose like one of the stories? I don't have the book yet, but I've had the book before and
Yeah.
read it once.
So what I'd like you to do for those chapters, if you haven't done that yet, is you don't have to analyze the entire chapter. Just either make one claim about it, one rhetorical claim, and then show a couple instances of that, like it was long-winded here, and see, this lasted for 4 pages, and I should have done one, and this, and I got the point by here, and explain that a little bit thoroughly. Or you can do 3 different claims and make an argument. It was long-winded, see this, and it was useful, it had this cool idea, and, some other rhetorical claim. So just it's kind of like just writing a response, but adding a little element of rhetorical analysis for practice. Yeah.
And are we analyzing the authors of this text and how they write it, or are we analyzing the examples that they give and how those authors write it? Because I have been analyzing the actual authors of this text and how.
That's what I
they
had in
present
mind,
it.
but either way is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, either way is fine. Partly, I just want to know you read it, and I want you to think about it a little bit and get a little practice out of it. So whatever falls in those parameters is worth 10 points for me.
Okay.
All right. So back on rhetoric again. Does anybody remember I know we watched that video at least of it in class. What's the short definition of rhetoric?
Isn't it ethos, logos, and pathos?
Yeah, so those are the three components of it. Those are the three aspects. And what are all those things used for? Yeah.
To influence people through your words.
Yeah, good. You know, when it began back in ancient Greece, it was always, well, generally always with that persuasive goal in mind. Now sometimes you write just to inform, not necessarily to persuade, but it still applies. But yeah, so my short definition of rhetoric is the art of communication. How you present it and how that makes it more or less effective. So in your rhetorical analysis paper, you're going to find an academic article on your topic, and you're going to skim it and cross stuff out and then annotate it, and then you're going to make one claim about the logos or the pathos or the ethos of that article, one claim, and then you're going to find like at least 3 instances that support that one claim. Okay, that's all this paper is. I've simplified it down so much. Like a lot of teachers will have you analyze logos and all different aspects of it, or analyze logos, add pathos, add ethos, the whole thing about an article, and that's fine. That's great. That's good practice. But I wanted you to get so clear about having a purpose for your paper and sticking with it, and just making one single point. And I think it's really useful simplifying down. Plus, it's that much easier for you, as long as you follow the writing process and plan what you're going to say, and don't fall back to the habit of summarizing the article. Don't summarize the article. Yeah.
I missed that last thing, in case it's finding article, annotating, one claim of ethos, pathos, logos,
And then find at least 3 instances to support your claim.
Do you want the article that we analyze with our paper?
Link to it, provide a link, like a permalink to it, so I can look it up if I want to, but you don't have to attach it or anything.
And then how long is this analysis? How long do you want it to?
Oh, good question. Did we talk about page limits last time?
You said,
Sorry.
That's fine about it. Yeah. I don't give page limits. I give a guideline on the very last paper, but we talked about the reason why, right? So many students would write and they'd say, 6 pages, I'm done. When they hadn't even evaluated if they filled, criteria. Yeah. So I just want you to do a good job, be thorough. We'll do a lot of practice tonight. And if you think I have made a reasonable claim, I have supported it and given at least 3 instances, I've made complete arguments, claim warrant, evidence warrant, then you say, well, then you can judge for yourself that you're done. Because you know how a lot of you said, like last time, that one thing you don't like about English classes is you do something and it's good or it's not good and it's not really clear why. So you told me that. Well, I don't want you to leave this class feeling that way. I want you to feel like, this is good and here's why. Oh, there's a little problem, where's that? I want you to be able to evaluate your own writing and know exactly what makes it good or bad. Now, someone else might not like it. They might say, I wanted a more formal style. Or, I got bored halfway through because this doesn't really apply to me. And you can say, that's fine, I wrote it for those people and they love it. So, yeah.
What were the 2 skills that you were going to talk about?
The 2 skills in the rhetorical analysis paper. So they're reading rhetorically, which chapter 2 covered, I think. I haven't read that forever, but I'm sure he did a good job. Being able to evaluate and say, I like how they did this, I don't like how they did this, here's why. And then the second is learn how to make good arguments, which we'll cover in depth in practice tonight. So let's move on and get started. Let me tell you more details about arguments. Let me define what an argument is first. And then we'll look at several examples and we'll practice doing rhetorical analysis on them. So hopefully by the time we're done, you're very comfortable with it and very clear about it all. So first off, you know that an argument, and this type of argument is not like a disagreement or a fight. This is a complete idea, a complete proposition that you present, and it's got 3 parts. The first part is a claim, and that's where you you just say, you just make a claim. So it is. You know, this is good, that's bad, this is expensive, that's not. This is blue and white. Everything you say, everything is a claim except two things. Do you remember, do you know what those two things are? Two types of sentences. Question, is this blue? See, I'm not claiming it is. I'm requesting information. I'm requesting a claim back. Yes, it's blue. And there's one more that starts with a C, one more type of sentence that's not claiming something.
Command?
Yeah, command. Yeah, that's right. Good job. You know, put down your pencils. I'm telling you what to do. I'm not claiming that you are putting, you know, you can always use a claim as a command. You will put down your pencil right now. See, so you can kind of mix them, blend them. But so the first part of an argument is this claim. And in the book, it tells you that in chapter 3, I think, or 4 that you're going to read for next week, it says there are 3 types of claims. That's maybe a little interesting. I don't know how useful that is to know. It says there are claims, for example, policy. We should spend more money on our teachers. We should get a football team at UVU. You know, we should do something, policy, like that. There's also claims of value. Vanilla ice cream is the best. Peppermint's even better, just because, you know, it's your values. We should protect children because they're our greatest asset. I said that kind of sarcastic, but I'm sure it's true. You know, so values. And then the third one they list is claim of fact. The sky is blue because the other wavelengths get spread out going through the atmosphere, and so we see blue. There's this book, I'm sure I'll read you an example from it at some point during class, called A Natural History of the Senses. It's basically this huge research report on all of your senses and beyond. But it's written in these essays, and these are really descriptive. It's some of the most beautiful writing I've ever seen. And the author, Diane Ackerman, she starts out every little chapter with this really engaging claim. Like she'll say, look at your feet. You're standing in the sky. You go, oh, that's a cool way to, you know, or polar bears aren't white, they're clear. And then she explains it, how polar bears, you know, they just have these thin, hollow hairs for insulation, and it diffracts light. So rather than actually having color, like, I'm going to close this door just okay. They just appear white, and that's not the sky is like. Anyway, so.
What's the name of that?
Diane Ackerman. Yeah, highly recommend that book. There's a lot of things to really about. There's one other type. When I read the chapter, though, I thought, you missed one. I think there are other types of claims they didn't put in the book. And the one I thought of is cause and effect, causation. So if you do this, that will happen. Maybe that's a claim of fact. Maybe that fits under fact. I don't know. But I just remember reading it and thinking there was one they missed. Again, I don't think it's super important. It's a little bit important to recognize what type of claim. So if you're say you're in Congress, and you know the honorable gentleman from Mississippi stands up and says, "We should pass this bill because our children are our best resource." So what type of claim was that?
Policy.
That's a trick question. Yeah, policy. We should pass this bill and
Cause and effect?
and values.
Oh.
Because we value our children, kind of stuff. So maybe it is.
It also applies causation.
Or if you say causation, I would say, by the way, they all overlap. And when you read the chapter and they give you the examples, you're like, I'm not really sure what that one is. Sometimes it's two blended. They don't give a little answer key. My students always complain about that, but whatever.
Well, it implies that passing the bill will aid the children.
Yes, so it's kind of implied. So if you say, if we don't pass this bill, children will suffer. See, that's clearly cause and effect kind of stuff. But yeah, they overlap quite a bit. So when you read that chapter, don't let that confuse you. Can you see the value of being aware of what kind of claim it is?
Mhm.
A lot of people will try to make policy claims based on values claims, and sometimes values claims can be oversimplified, for example. Here's a claim, a current political claim. We should give amnesty to all illegal aliens who have lived here more than 5 years and been earning a living. There's a policy claim, right? We should do that. And if you want to do that, that's fine, you know, it can be your opinion. But,
I thought you had to give a reason why.
He's getting there.
so you're right. So that was just the claim part. And then you have to, the second part of an argument is usually people say evidence. I'm gonna say support, because I think that's a little more broad than just evidence. And the support has two purposes. One is to prove it, and one is to, I guess, sell it, sell your claim. So in the case of, let's say, Amnesty for Illegal Aliens, we say we should give it to them because they're pretty Americans, and we were all, you know, like Indigo Girls. I think we were on the same boat back in 1864. You know, we all were immigrants here at some time, so let's not discriminate. Let's let everyone come who wants to. And so a lot of people use values, you know, things like, doesn't it make you feel good? Isn't that nice? And you could say, well, I see how that's a value, but let's look at it from a policy standpoint or a causation standpoint. What would happen? How would that affect city overpopulation and crime rates and, you know, drains on welfare, all that kind of stuff. So you want to take a look at it from all these different perspectives before you make big policy changes, for example. So it might be a little bit useful to be aware of the type of claim. I can see how that could be useful. So let's talk next then about support. There are various types of support. You can have statistics, like the claim is you should stop texting while you're driving, even though you think you're competent, because 20% of auto accidents in this country last year were caused while someone was texting, so there's probably a causal relationship in there. And you may think you're great, but you're not as great as you think you are. So you could use a statistic like that. People would say, wow, 20%, that's a lot. I'm not sure that's the right number, but it's pretty high. You can use an example or an anecdote, another word for that, a story. And like my sister was driving and she was texting and then a train ran over her. So our anecdotal evidence, that's not true. My sisters would never drive and text. Is that a good example to prove my claim that you should stop texting because my sister got hit by a train?
Well, no, because what if she was a passenger?
I said she was driving, so.
Oh, okay.
Unless she had her own little play steering wheel.
That's right.
Yeah, if my sister was
Simpsons.
3 years old. Yeah. This kind of evidence is good for one thing and it's terrible for another. It's terrible for proving things. You know, last year I drove my 4Runner a bunch and it burned all this gas and put all this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And now we've hit 400 parts per million CO2 in our atmosphere. See how there's not necessarily, you know,
Correlation.
I mean, there's some correlation, but, you
It's
know.
not causation.
Not a direct, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, correlation is not necessarily causation anyway, but you've
Right.
not really proven either. You've not proven a correlation between you driving your
You know, when
Forerunner
I
a
try and
bunch.
talk to my wife
and-
logically like this, she gets really mad.
When did she get
If I
mad?
if I try to talk to my wife really logically like this, she gets really mad at me.
Like,
Because she'll make claims about things, and I'm like, that's not completely right.
Yeah.
Well, you need to learn to be wrong.
I remember,
That's what she says. She's like, you just need to let me be right.
I had a girlfriend say that same thing. Why do you always have to be right? I'm like, do I? I mean, if you'll make a good case, I'd be happy to believe you. You have to persuade me.
So would you use an example to play on people's emotions?
Yeah. Examples are fantastic to illustrate and help people identify it and say, oh, your 4Runner created this much CO2, which is this percentage of the whole, why we're killing all the fish in the ocean or whatever.
I wonder what my Hummer's doing.
Yeah, so it can help them to relate. It's great for that, but it's terrible for proving your whole point.
It's like when you're a salesman, you paint a picture.
Yeah, yeah, visually, and then what happens when they visualize that, it's like they actually experience it.
Make it emotionally affect, like a car salesman taking on on a drive, a test drive,
Yeah.
to make you emotionally buy into the car.
Yeah.
She does say
And that,
Surprised there's not a power cord or something to plug it in.
I know, I kind of am too. Like to have these things where you can stick a few batteries together, but anyway. What other kinds of support do we have? Oh yeah, one more. We have appeal to authority. Or, quote somebody, quote an expert who we trust. Einstein said this, and he's a pretty smart guy, so if he said it's good enough for me, I don't understand, but I'm sure he did. So is that a good kind of support?
It can be.
It can be, yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to sound totally ignorant. I'm just having the hardest time with this. So let's say you're talking about what did Albert Einstein do? Quantum physics or something? I know zero,
Yeah.
right? So if somebody outside of this class, because you're critiquing us on this clearly, or wanting us to do the opposite, says, what do you know about quantum physics? Or you have to come up with some opinion on it, or you have to make a statement. I'd be like, I have no idea. Let's go to Albert Einstein. I'm sure he knew something. Because who else do I have to turn to? I could make something up. I could lie. It could be phony.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know why that's a bad thing necessarily. What else would I do?
Well,
The claim that you started out your example with, I think is one of the most important ones that we don't use, that our society and culture does not use nearly enough. I don't know. If you don't know something, just say you don't know. A lot of things we just don't know. And say, well, here's what I do know. Einstein said this. So you kind of say, here's his claim, and whether you understand it or not. Does that answer your question?
Well, I thought you were saying if you did that, it's not ideal. I thought that's what you were saying.
Well, when
So I ask
we're
him-
trying to defend a
yeah.
claim.
Like sometimes this is a great thing, like if it comes from some brilliant person who really knows their stuff and they said so, rely on that, right? And if you understand it better, then hopefully you might get to the point where you disagree. Sometimes it is bad for a few reasons.
I was going to give an example of
Okay.
when an appeal to authority went wrong.
Okay.
There's a documentary called Mr. Death by Errol Morris. It's about America's foremost authority on capital punishment because he's devised and executed multiple forms of capital punishment
Yeah.
for many states that have been deemed constitutional because they're not cruel and unusual punishment. He started off with building a gallows and then moved on to an electric chair.
Yeah.
And then death by lethal injection. He did the automated process. He devised
Yeah.
the automated process for death by lethal injection that most states currently use. So he's an expert on
one side
on
of
capital punishment. He's an expert on
Yeah.
capital punishment. And so it's an interesting documentary, but it turns much more interesting when he goes, I think, to Auschwitz and goes to the gas chambers and starts analyzing the gas chambers and then makes the claim based on his authority that the number of executions by lethal gas that occurred there do not match the claims of many people. And he's been used by a lot of Holocaust deniers to support their denial of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And so, he is an expert on capital punishment, but
Was making a claim about
he was
something.
not a trained scientist, and so he was not an
Right.
expert in gathering data.
Yeah.
And so,
But people still say, and people these days will use whatever is useful to them to prove their point instead of
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to figure out the truth, right?
This is the kind of milk Einstein drank. He's really smart. Don't you
Yeah.
want to be smart too?
That's how advertising used to be, isn't that
That's
funny?
exactly right.
I think he smoked weed.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's so clear. One other problem with appeal to authority that's sort of growing is this quote, is demonstrated by this quote from Abraham Lincoln. Some of you have probably heard of it before. It said, the problem with quotes on the internet is that you can never really verify who said it. Yeah, so
Don't make the mistake of reposting something that you just saw.
right.
Well, the problem is that maybe the,
I made that mistake and someone corrected me. He's like, Bill Cosby did not say that. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Well, Will
and
Cosby
right
is supposed to have said.
And right now, this expert might be completely right in what they say,
Uh-huh.
but when you use this expert's quote and they're there to support you, when they're proven wrong, automatically you are too.
Good point. So what do we do? I mean, as you're writing your finals papers and you want to get as close to the truth as possible, and you find some expert with an opinion that supports some claim, what should you do to make sure that you protect yourself against
Research.
destruction?
This
Hedge your
person
bets.
believes.
Yeah, hedge your bet. Find people who maybe disagree. So you can say, here are all sides, seems to make most sense this way, kind of stuff. And as a reminder, that is one of the requirements for the final paper. You will show where experts disagree to some degree, show some different opinions. This shows that you can handle having a little more complexity than just one-sided view. Okay, so there's claim and support. They're the first two parts of an argument. And does anyone know the third part?
Conclusion.
There's, I was trying to decide if that's a good word for this. It sort of is in a way.
Warrant?
Yeah, warrant is the official word for it. And an easier word that makes a little more sense that people often like to use is bridge. And the job of the warrant is to show the connection between the claim and the support. So let me do a quick little practice example of this. Okay, here's a great example. This will make it very clear. Warrant, so a claim is your opinion. Support is trying to prove and support that claim, that opinion. And warrant kind of explains the connection between them. So let me give you one that for some of you will come out completely different. And you'll see that warrant can sort of be an opinion as well. I mean, everything's made of opinions. It's just how good of a case you could make. So here's an example. President Obama is the best president we've ever had because after decades of trying and failing, he finally got universal health care law to pass, reform. So, do you see my claim? What's my claim?
He's the best.
Best president.
And what's my proof?
You got healthcare to pass.
Okay, so now give me the warrant. Why does passing healthcare make him a great president?
Because he was the first one to do it.
Okay, because he succeeded where others failed. And so if that is my measure for being great, you know, succeeding at passing laws that other people didn't get through yet, then you're going to have to concede that he's great at that, right?
Couldn't use,
Good point.
You're talking about
He didn't
just-
kill Bin Laden either, but he did fail to save Benghazi ambassadors.
are we just talking about him being the greatest president of the United States and being able to pass that because other countries have universal health care,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
I did say best president. Right?
Mhm.
Now he's just on par with Denmark and all those places.
I could make the claim that James Polk was the greatest American president because he made 4 campaign promises, and at the end of his single term, all those campaign promises had been fulfilled. And
That's
he chose
uncommon.
not to run a second term
Uh-huh.
because he'd done everything he promised he was going to do.
Wow. See, so if that is our measurement of what makes a great president, Polk rocks.
Yeah, you can't poke fun at that.
So I want you to reverse this now. I want you to change the warrant and I'm going to use the same support. I'm going to use it in a different way. So Barack, during his presidency, we passed Obamacare. Now I want you to tell me why that proves he's the worst president ever. Just by changing the warrant. Okay.
I'm just devil's advocate style, right?
Oh yeah, that's what we're doing.
Always.
I'm doing.
Because the country was found, the foundation of individual capitalism, or earning your own way, and this is socialism is gonna ruin the country and destroy our government and our constitution and the founding father, on and on and on.
Great. So by making us less Adam Smith's invisible hand and more government taking care of everybody, that's hurting, more damage than all that kind of stuff.
slap the invisible hand.
It got shot by the three amigos, I think. Now add one more, let's keep this argument we just had. He's the worst ever because he's introducing more socialism, just like the FDR, the Great Deal, the New Deal. And now give me one more piece of evidence to support the same claim. He's the worst president ever because he's introducing socialism. Claim one was Obamacare. Give me one more incidence of being a bad president and
He hasn't
socialism.
been proven to be a citizen or something. of the
Okay,
sorts.
yeah, the birther movement
That
kind of
his
thing.
intentions may not be for the nation, like something like that.
Okay, and how he, so you're also talking about how he treats other countries and the lack of American exceptionalism, that idea?
Did you want another support of the claim that through, he's bringing about socialism,
Yeah,
Sure.
that Obamacare would be popular welfare, and he also is instituting corporate welfare by bailing out banks and.
Okay, yeah, to be fair, kind of stuff.
Well,
Okay.
I
NGM.
don't like it.
But that's
They're
stuff that's
having another
voted
claim
on
why
by
he's a great
Congress. That's
president.
actually not
Okay,
Obama.
let's hear that.
I don't like Obama, but he's a great president. He got inner cities and ghettos to come out and vote. He's the president ever had.
That's true, he motivated with
Yeah,
free stuff or
more-
whatever, and first black president, and you know, there's some,
It's the same thing.
that's got some value in it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I know.
Inner city Philadelphia coming out and
Well,
wrecking
but-
numbers, yeah, right.
Yeah.
He didn't vote.
The
in
legislature
law.
voted.
That's right. The
It's the
legislature.
same word.
Yeah.
What would happen if around election time, people had this sort of discussion, looking at all sides of issues and seeing and think from angles you might not even agree with?
If you don't vote no.
If you're in Florida, you'd be arrested probably.
Why Florida?
No, it's just a joke.
Yeah, okay. It's not a big swing state, but it is.
People would be less likely to be swayed by powerful and moneyed interests.
Yeah, and by all those ads that are just emotional appeal and stuff. And you'd have to unfriend fewer people on Facebook who are just driving you crazy with their extreme views. Here's a good point about claims. Extreme views are rarely accurate. Almost never are extreme views accurate.
That's pretty extreme.
Yes, but in this case, it's true.
Only the Sith deal with this.
Yes, there's a good one too. Yeah. Did Chuck want to talk about binary thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Not to do it.
Yeah, either or. I'm now resisting another long tangent about that. But yeah, so look at other sides, you know, see both sides before you, if you're gonna come down strong on one side, make sure to take a look. So our arguments, do they seem pretty clear now at this point? Pretty easy, right? 3 parts. So your rhetorical analysis paper is gonna be a claim about the logos or pathos or ethos, and then at least 3 instances that all support that claim. So you're going to stick all about this claim. Your whole paper is about that one claim and proving it with, and each of these arguments, you're going to have a claim, and you're going to have evidence, and you're going to have a warrant. Oftentimes, the warrant is kind of implied, you kind of get it, like you should buy a Honda Civic because it gets good mileage. Now tell me the warrant for that. Why does getting good mileage mean you should buy it?
Because you'll save money.
Save you money, save the environment.
Might have been a choice, both.
What?
Never mind.
Okay, so it's obvious enough that we get it. You should go to Utah Valley University because it's nearby, if it's nearby to your house. Tell me the warrant.
You can walk.
Yeah, convenient. Right, you can walk and then save the environment again.
Yeah.
You should go to McDonald's because they're having a special on Big Macs. My claim and evidence.
That claim is not warranted.
Make one up against your better judgment.
Save money.
Save money, there you go.
I just keep thinking like all your examples right now, they're clearly all from the point of view, the way I took it from the person, like McDonald's, coming from McDonald's wants you to buy a Big Mac. And when it comes to me from that way, I'm immediately analyzing it, breaking it down.
Yeah.
But if someone next door, just sitting next to me, with this guy right here, just like, this Big Mac is awesome. And I'm like, that does look, I'm like, all of a sudden I take it, I'll like consider what he's saying, I can see him eating it. It's just different. Of course, McDonald's wants you to eat the Big Mac.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm just confused. The claim, like I have a lot of questions. I'm really caught up on like, what am I supposed to be declaring with these claims? I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to just start declaring things that
You're gonna read your article and you're gonna annotate it and you say, oh, good point, well done.
in the article, in
Right.
a specific article,
Right.
make a claim of whatever you think about it specifically?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
starting with like the basic concept of claims and doing really easy examples, easier to relate to, and we'll steadily work toward examples, and we'll get to articles and critique them, what you'll do with the actual paper.
Okay, we're not making some big claim about immigration necessarily.
No,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
just practice. No, that's a good question. And you brought up a very important point. See this thing, cooperative readers? This is your whole goal when you write a paper with your rhetoric. You want to make them cooperate with you. You want to make claims that they're comfortable with, that they're willing to consider, and they don't say, if you're McDonald's and you start out and say, hey, come buy our food, you're like instant resistance because it's made you sick before, or because it's unhealthy, or you watch Super Size Me or something, so you have this resistance. So when they do their ads, take a look. They do things to try and hey, how about Coca-Cola? A while ago, they talked about all the good causes that they support, the money they donate to communities, I can't remember what their specific things are.
Walmart as well has done a lot of that.
Yeah, they give a lot of money, just checks to local charities and stuff. You don't want to sit on the front row, I understand. So they try and get people to cooperate. But later, when we talk about strategies in your own writing and stuff, and which kind of structure you want to choose, I just want to reinforce this, mention that several times during this
Did you guys see that GE commercial that had that guy from The Matrix in it? Who wasn't, what's his name? I thought that was the most ingenious.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, but he was the agent, but what is it? Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving. GE did this computer commercial about healthcare, how everything's getting computerized and it's so much better, and it had the agent from The Matrix selling it and why it's
and you're like, oh, I don't trust him.
Yeah, but the
I don't
way
want
that
him
they
to have all my
pitched it,
data.
and I love Hugo Weaving, so the way that
Yeah.
they pitched it is really good because GE gets bad raps all the time, which I believe justly so, but that was a great commercial. It's
Yeah.
still one of my favorite. Or the Jake from State Farm. Who are you talking to at 3 o'clock in the morning? Jake from State Farm. Yeah, has nobody seen that?
I've seen that one.
I love that. What are you wearing, Jake from State Farm? Khakis? She sounds hideous. Oh, she's a guy, so it's my favorite. Just these ingenious ways to
Yeah.
get you to.
And with humor,
Yeah.
and some famous flamboyant gay person said, I saw this quote a while ago, which may or may not have actually been from him, but it sounds like him, said, if you tell people the truth, you better make them laugh or they'll kill you. So humor can be a really good rhetorical strategy to get people over difficult things. There's hard concepts that are hard for them to deal with. This is like back, 50 years ago when being gay was really dangerous or something in some ways, I guess. Okay, so we've covered this. I think we're ready to actually look at some examples.
Monty Python?
No, we won't use Monty Python.
Thank you.
They have a fantastic thing about what an argument is.
Do they? Also, check it out.
Once a year.
If you look at the, it's something about purchasing an argument. And they actually
Purchasing an argument?
Yeah, the person walks in and says, I'd like an argument, puts money down on the table, it's like, well, how long would you like it for? And so they start arguing and then, but they ask basically, what is an argument? And they actually give a really succinct answer for what an argument really is.
Yeah.
A sense of philosophical rather than trying to.
So if I Google Monty Python argument, will I find that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll check it out there. Do you want me to make you do a few more examples? Yes, actually. I'm going to make you do a few more examples while we bring up the computer. I'm going to tell you some claims, and I'd like you to complete them with first an evidence, and then a warrant, and then another evidence and warrant. So Pick a number between 1 and 6.
7.
Okay, we'll go with 7. Depression could be caused by many things. That's why I say 1 and 6. That's numbers. Okay, there's a claim. Give me an evidence. Something that proves that depression can be caused by many things.
Let's go with 4.
There are people.
Does anyone have Dr. Drew's
It can
number?
affect you like physically, cognitively, and emotionally.
Okay, because it can affect you in different ways. Now, does that
That's a,
prove that it can be caused by many things?
No.
That proves that that it affects us in different ways, right? And actually, thanks for giving that example. That's perfect because I really wanted to make that case. I'm surprised by how many students make claims and they put evidence in or a quote from their article, and sometimes the quote is so dense you don't want to stop and think about it, but if you stop and think about it, which I will, it's my job, grading your papers, you'll realize that claim has nothing to do, that evidence has nothing to do with your claim. So double check, sometimes, like with this topic, this is, for a lot of people, this is a really, really important topic, and somebody starts talking about it and immediately you have, I hope you can't get my password from the video. You have a lot of things you want to say about it. So anyway, just be careful when you do that.
there are people who have depression who have an extensive family history of depression, and there are people who have depression who have no family history of depression.
Okay.
Well, but that just rules out family. That doesn't prove that there's.
Yeah, that just makes it.
It says there may sometimes be, but not
Yeah,
necessarily.
there may
But
be a genetic
you
component to
could-
depression, and there may be
You could
some people
argue
who have
that
depression
that's
with no
just
genetic
correlation,
component.
not causation.
Yes, well,
If
see,
you
we
have-
don't know. So we show some correlation, which may be causation, but it's not the only causation.
Well, but you could also say, from the other side, you could say, well, that could not be the causation at all. It could be the color green. People who see more green in a day become depressed, and you can tell that
That's
because
probably
those
true.
people who have a history of, like, a family history of it, maybe they just have more green in their house. So you can't just say the genetic.
No, you'd have to say that everyone in that family, in the
Yeah,
history of that
the evidence
family,
you gave
who
is not
exhibits
enough.
depression.
Unless they're colorblind.
But there's also other evidences to support
You're right, but you
familial.
can't
Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys should write your paper together. You should.
Yes.
So depression could be caused by environment, where you live, who you're with, what you think of yourself. It can be caused by, like they said, genetic factors. It can be caused by your diet. It can be caused by traumatic life experiences. It can be caused by this, this, and this. And then each one of those tiny things we can expand on and show what factors specifically in each one of those subcategories, how those would bring on depression. For example, your environment. I live in a dark basement. It must be, I'm always sad because of that.
Get less serotonin and seasonal affective disorder.
Exactly. And then so you go through each one of those as a support to say there's not just one specific reason for depression, but there's all of these different things.
Okay, see, so that was a perfect correlation. I said it could be caused by many things, and you listed many things, and then you prove each one of those. That was a perfect answer.
Okay, so I'm asking, honestly, I apologize, I'm catching up to this whole thing.
Oh, don't worry about it.
So it seems like all the answers so far were just things off top of people's heads.
Uh-huh.
So what if I said, well, I Googled this PhD sociologist at Harvard that did a survey that was specifically showing that out of this large, huge group of people, they all wrote down different reasons for their depression. So that proves that there must be a correlation that it comes from different places.
Great, so you just did two. You did appeal to authority and kind of explanation and maybe kind of anecdotal.
And maybe
if you have
answers, yeah,
stats in there
all
too. Yeah, that's
So is that-
different
it's not
kinds
bad
of
then?
support. No,
That's good.
Okay.
as long as it's convincing, as long as it's reasonable.
Because I made it up. I don't know if there's a sociologist at Harvard that did anything.
Yeah.
But I just,
Most of
I'm pretty sure that there are no sociologists at Harvard that have done anything.
Yeah, Harvard, I never heard of it. Okay, that was good. Let's do one more example. There
Did you want us
should
to
be-
warrant that?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so let's narrow it down to just, what's your name again?
William.
William. Let's narrow it down just to Williams because it's simple. Depression could be caused by many things because a Harvard sociologist did a survey that indicated so. Now give me the warrant.
So therefore it is.
That's that is a warrant, but to get it fleshed out a little bit more.
Because this study showed that so many people have so many causes of depression, and that's many causes.
Yes. Okay, good. Now, sometimes you have an argument or a claim in a warrant, a claim in support, and it's so obvious that actually spelling out the warrant is like, everyone's like, duh, I got it. It's so obvious. So sometimes warrant can be just implied, but on your rhetorical analysis paper, I want you to write it anyway for practice to get aware. Because the warrant's the one that's a little harder to grasp how that works. So let's do one more then. There should be a law against bullying.
Bullying?
Yeah, bullying. I have to be careful because some people would say to themselves like, a law against bullying, I love bullying.
That's why I had you enunciate better for me.
So give me some
Are there already laws
evidence.
against bullying?
That's a question, so it's not a claim,
It's called harassment.
right?
Well, I said there should be laws.
Oh,
There should be, yeah. And in other countries, since you asked, there are, but I don't think we really do.
There's policies in certain school districts,
Sure.
but there's not a law. So.
Yeah.
It's covered by other laws.
Okay, so you want to take it the other way and make the claim there should not be a law against one? I mean, somebody give me some evidence to support that
I
one
can
way or
give
the
you a
other.
real one.
There should be a law against bullying, because since there is not a law, no one feels responsible to do anything.
About it.
Yeah, if there was a law, then they would be responsible.
Good. What kind of evidence was that?
Explanation?
Yeah, reasoning, showing, so people say, oh, that makes sense. Good. Give me a different type of evidence now.
Because more people obey a social rule when there is a law. Like seatbelts, when they made it a law, more
Yeah.
people did it, and so that's
Right.
why bullying should
And
be
it
a law.
saves some lives. So
60% of children that are bullied have suicidal thoughts on a daily
There you
basis.
go.
great. 600,000 students stay home from school in America every single day. 600,000 because they're afraid. That's a real stat. from the paper last
Because 49% of statistics are made up on the spot.
Okay.
My number was real, at least according to my students.
That's why I always ask when it comes to like a percentage.
I thought it was 82%.
Yeah. You know, because of Facebook and because of our lying politicians and media who just say whatever they want to get their way, have you become more cynical and more critical thinking, like you evaluate where your sources come from and all? So that's a healthy thing. It's unfortunate that it came to, where it's forced upon us. But
You also have to evaluate the statistic, because based on the criteria of how they came up with the
Yeah.
statistic, they can really
yeah, that's true. You really need to get
twist
it in
numbers to
context.
make them say what they want them to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
So you appreciate the news shows that really show both sides. Feel so much more better about it.
The best statistics that I see are the ones that have the error rate in them, that tell you this is the and it adds up
Plus
to like
or minus
105% of something,
Yeah.
because they input, we understand that our statistics might not be perfect, but there's an error rate of this for, not returned surveys or biased opinion.
Right.
I don't know.
Or we talked to
But-
too many Democrats in our survey. And that's
Exactly.
Yeah, they're the favorite. Yeah. Okay, one last one, and this one, I'm going to ask for support. Give me some support from somebody who has not spoken up today, which is nothing against those of you who do. Thank you. I love all your comments. They're great, but I bet there are a lot of people who
We'll just stare at everybody who hasn't.
have fun.
We'll bully them with our eyes.
Okay, and I'll let you guys choose between these three. Mankind should go to Mars, or students shouldn't have to write 12-page papers, or smiling makes you happier. Somebody pick one of those and give me some evidence. We should go to Mars, or you shouldn't have to write 12-page papers, or smiling makes you happier. Evidence.
We should go to Mars because we're using up Earth's resources.
Great. And Mars has lots of them. Oh wait, it just has rocks.
Yeah, great. Go to Mars because it's the next frontier.
Great. Tell me a few more. Actually, you guys are on a good roll.
We should go to Mars to continue further generations of space exploration.
Great.
We should go to Mars and not be guilty of littering another planet.
And not be guilty? So
Yeah, we have
kicks
so
in
many
when we get
robots
there.
just strewn out on the.
Oh, right. Okay, great. Now, give me a warrant. Life.com/UVU. In fact, on this very page we're looking at. So I've got my 2 days of my Tuesday class up, and then here's, I'm putting the Friday ones on Vimeo for now, right now, and I'm putting the Thursday ones, like, who cares? Anyway, I'll be posting this. Yeah, so you can review.
Can you send us to our email the link to the website?
It's on the syllabus, it's on the top of the syllabus. You know, my email address, and then resources is Canvas, and it has this webpage and another one.
Okay.
Yeah. Easy to find. All right, so arguments, pretty easy. Claims, warrants. They kind of make sense, but when you actually go to do it, it takes a little more thought power. That's okay. That's how you learn to do it well. All right, we're going to view some videos and some articles then, and we're going to practice our rhetorical analysis. We're going to practice two things. Not only will you observe like how it's presented, and when we watch the videos, like we're going to watch a TED Talk. How many have seen TED.com? If you haven't, I highly recommend. So much cool information, really well presented.
And free.
Yeah, and free. So we're going to watch that, and when we watch someone speaking, you can, when you watch film, you can analyze so many more things than just their words, their tone of voice, their appearance, their body motion, their age. One of them I used to show is this guy had huge ears, and that was distracting. You know, you can analyze anything you want about rhetorically. In other words, how does it affect your reception of the message? And what we'll also practice is we'll practice not discussing the topic. I loved what she said about this because that's so true. Okay, don't discuss the topic. Don't summarize it, nothing. We're going to practice focusing just on rhetoric. Just because that's the big danger of the rhetorical analysis paper. You start summarizing the article. So we'll practice staying with that. Ready? All right. So we'll start with Angela here. And sorry, there'll be a commercial that plays first. We'll watch this and discuss. And I'll.
She was the head of the team.
Good.
Is her like assertion.
So not only did she do the research, but she was the head of the team, and that's prestigious and shows she must know what's going on. Good. What's another thing that helped her ethos?
The very forum in which she's presenting at TED gives an imprimatur of authority to whoever's speaking, and they do that just through various means, through their history, the people that have spoken at the TED Talks. And they also do that through the production values of the TED Talks. And so you see things like, it's not a single camera. The camera gives a good image quality, so it's a high quality, multiple high quality cameras. They've put thought into lighting. The audience is actually lit with blue light, so that you can see the audience in the background. But it's a light that doesn't distract from her in the foreground as well. So they've done multiple things with production value of the presentation that also provides credibility.
And add your warning in there. Tell me how the lighting, for example, I was noticing that same thing this time through, how that improves her credibility.
How it improves her credibility?
Yeah, the cool tone.
How the lighting improves her credibility. People have invested a good deal of time and money to create the good lighting. And that lends some to her credibility in that.
Right. So I just want to point out,
her arguments have enough value that somebody that has invested the time and the money to pay for a lighting designer and a cinematographer, and the lights themselves to put her argument in its best light.
Well put. Nice use of turn of phrase there. So I just want to point out that's completely legitimate, and I just want to point out that what was happening is like we kind of did 3 stages here as you gave this example, where we start out and say her credibility is enhanced by the fact that she's talking at TED, which is a credible, recognizing experts kind of thing. And then as you talked about the production values, now you're supporting this intermediate claim that TED, being at TED, adds to her credibility. So that's legitimate, but if you as you write your paper, if you think you're going too deep supporting something, actually that's not really a problem, but just make sure that you keep making it clear that you're focused on your main thing. So I just wanted to bring that up to point out for the rhetorical analysis paper. But yeah, good point. Very good point. Anything else that helps with credibility?
This will seem abstract, but it's important to me. If you were to erase all over the other things that we've already established, this one thing would still be enough for me. She's a 7th grade math teacher, which has got to be brutal.
Yeah.
It's got to be mundane, and I can't imagine, actually. And I'm sure there are not very many 7th grade teachers that would do what she did. She was able to think outside the box, is what I'm trying to simply say.
Yeah.
To me, I'm on board with that concept alone. She could have been a substitute teacher for all I care. If she was telling the story, I would be impressed and interested in what she had to say.
Yeah.
Her PhD just adds to it for me.
That's great. And so some people probably see 7th grade and they go crazy and they go to another job because they couldn't handle it, but not her.
Or they
She
just
left
sit in the
because she was
corner and
interested in
put
their
on it.
success. So yeah.
She really wanted to know what was going on and how she could help.
Yeah, good. So you see, this would be a pretty good, even, I won't stop you, but even what we've got so far, where you say she had great credibility, you've made several good arguments that really support that claim. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was just dying to say this. If she was on mute and she was wearing a tutu and had hot pink hair, I still think that we would, take her seriously. So I think that what someone looks like.
Because, so her parents,
Yeah, she's got a conservative but kind of a classy look, and I
Yeah.
think that adds to a lot of that.
yeah, parents can make a difference.
There's a good example of that with Nixon and Kennedy.
The radio listeners versus the TV listeners.
It's a big study. I mean, it's a well-known
Yeah.
fact, but Kennedy won because of television, because
Television.
people trusted the way he looked,
Yeah.
over Kennedy, who looked just old and
But he sounded
grumpy.
like he knew what was going on the radio, so he wanted him on the radio.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
also sweating and
Yeah.
touching, like
Right,
really moving back and forth,
right.
which made him look unsure.
Good thing that didn't happen nowadays, because nowadays, like, he stopped for a drink of the water in the middle of his speech. And that's all they focus on. What did he say? Shut up! You stopped for a drink of water! Oh. Media sucks.
Optics.
What do you want
Something
to
called
know?
it.
Optics, what's that?
Optics. That the visual and what people
Yeah.
get from the visual is more important than the content.
That's
so
true.
they concentrate on the optics.
Yeah. I was reading, my favorite class I ever took was cross-cultural communications, talks about, anyway, let me get to the point. In the textbook, the author claims that 70% of our information is gathered visually. And that's too much of an overgeneralization. I tried to imagine like a physics lecture on the Big Bang, where 70% of your information came from facial expression, and then boom, So it doesn't really apply, but yeah, it's a lot of information. Have we seen enough of Angela? Shall we move on to our next example? I think you guys have done a great job with this.
Let's finish it.
Let me jump to the end, and I'll just show you kind of how she ends up. She basically says that we need more research on how to teach grit. And something else we didn't get to point out is the way she uses even her sentence lengths, which I will teach you later in the semester, really accentuates things. And her use of repetition, she's a good writer and speaker. She's like, it wasn't this, it wasn't this, it wasn't this, it was grit. And the way the size of sentences just, I'll teach you how to focus on things just by making a short sentence. And some other ways to focus on things. But here you go, here's their end.
You have to be willing to fail, to be wrong, to start over again with lessons learned. In other words, we need to be gritty about getting our kids grittier. Thank you.
So, very good. All right, John, we got time. Let's look at this funny one. Funny and serious. Here's Jon Stewart the other night. Daily Show, comedian who talks
jump is
about
changed forever when a man dares to jump back first. Courageous thinking. This is the Mazda way, and this is the all-new Mazda 6 with class-leading highway MPG. What do you drive?
Anyway. Do you know, you all know about the Benghazi issue going on, was it a cover-up?
The
People are,
bombing?
Yeah, people are saying, was it sloppy? Did they get their ambassador killed on purpose because he knew too much about his job was funneling arms over the Syrian rebels? People are talking about all, like the 4 generals that got fired immediately after for either wanting to come to their aid, they knew too much. I mean, there's all these questions being asked, and we're not really getting the answers. But they just did, like, this is the second part of his show, I think, and he just had all these really funny things talking about how we've done this, like the 8th Inquisition about the Benghazi, and they showed these Republicans making all these claims, like this is worse than Iran-Contra, which was a similar scandal sort of back in the 80s, and Watergate times 10. So is that a reasonable claim? No, that's a stupid claim. And yet because our, anyway, they're totally discrediting themselves, but then we come into this second part of his
President do. When it all went down in Benghazi, the administration facing the election went into panic mode, wanted to contain it, don't send in the military, don't blow this into a bigger thing it's going to be. This Obama administration's case was cowardly, duplicitous, and they sacrificed American lives for politics.
You know what, actually? Outrage justified. For the President of the United States to consciously allow Americans to die to protect his own political chances is damning, and your level of anger is in fact justified. As is the question you've been asking now for 8 months.
Where's the media outrage on Libya and Benghazi? Why is this story not getting more coverage in the mainstream media?
Where is the outrage?
Yes! I think I know her. Where is the outrage over Obama's cover-up, which we know is indeed the case? If that indeed was the case. If that indeed was the case. Wait. If that indeed was the case. See, I think I know what's going on here. You're at DEF CON, this definitely happened, not DEF CON, if that indeed was the case. Do you see what I'm saying? I think that's why people might not be outraged, because I think you're saying you're not sure yet.
What if the president lied about Benghazi, and what if, in fact, he knew about this much earlier?
What if it turns out that their lives might have been saved?
Well, what if it turns out that Benghazi was a death trap?
If there has indeed been a cover-up.
If he did nothing.
If he lied.
If that's the case.
If that's the case, John, that's outrageous.
Then that is the shame of America.
The consequences, of course, would be significant, including possible impeachment, if he lied.
Yes! If! And if dingleberries were diamonds, I could open a King Jewelers in my pants. If! I think I see the problem here. You can't understand why everyone else isn't as outraged as you, when it's because the rest of us aren't sure if what you're saying is true. And to be quite frank, you do have somewhat of a history of hysteria. Not that you've necessarily blown things out of proportion with this president or created highly emotional narratives concerning this president. I do remember this salute airing on Hannity just 100 days into his presidency. So help you God, so help me God. Congratulations. What do you think a stimulus is? I want him to fail.
Even President Obama admits America's arrogance. President, bow before the Saudi king.
God bless the United States of America. 3 months in, you have him as Damien in The Omen. You might be right. But the denizens of Wolf Mountain have cried wolf before. And after 8 months of intensive investigation, you should be able to better state your case than this from yesterday.
It sounds like what you've described, it sounds like there's been a cover-up, but what were they trying to cover up?
Well, again, this is why we're fighting for the truth. None of this would have come out if the Oversight Committee, if Darrell Issa, if our committee didn't continue to pursue this.
You have no idea! If what you're saying is true, and it's an important question, if what you're saying is true, if the president let America die for political reasons, then by God, bring us the evidence, and we will grab the pitchforks and torches along with you. But remember, that game goes both ways. Let me try. In 2011, the State Department requested funding for worldwide security protection and upgrades. Money that could perhaps have gone to protect Benghazi. The Republicans, like Darrell Issa, who's heading up this committee, voted to cut that funding. Maybe because of political reasons in an election year, to make the president look weak, thus sacrificing Americans for political gains. Did that happen?
If that's the case, John, that's outrageous.
All right, so rhetorically analyze that for me.
His hair was meticulous.
It was. What do we put that under? Logos, pathos, or ethos?
Hair? I'm not sure.
Appearance.
Appearance.
Depends on.
I think about ethos.
Yeah, it's about the speaker, so it's primarily that's ethos, exactly. And did his meticulous hair influence your reception of the message?
Oh, he was whipping his head around and it wasn't moving a whole lot. It was pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Did it influence your reception of the information?
No, not really.
Okay.
It may have. Had his hair been unkempt and
Crazy.
I think that was.
crazy, and had he been wearing like a tie-dye T-shirt and
Yeah. And there can be
bell-bottom jeans and sandals, that would have affected your perception of his presentation. So the fact that there was no perceived effect may have been an effect.
See, I disagree with that because I think it depends on how much exposure you have to that particular person.
Like you already know him.
You already know him, you already know this is the way he does it. So would you really care if on Freaky Friday he was in a tie-dye shirt with a bandana and giving the same information whether he was in a suit and tie or something else? I think that's debatable.
But if it's going to his credibility, if you're familiar with him, you're familiar with the fact that that's how he is.
Yeah.
On the Daily Show.
And that's how I tries to make him look like a serious newscaster.
Exactly.
Humor
That's
instead of the other way around.
That's part of the form of what he's doing.
Good.
So has anybody seen the show Ancient Aliens?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so this is what it made me think of. There's a guy on there who supposedly he's an expert in the field, but he believes that aliens have come down and helped humans in the past build all these, like Stonehenge and stuff like that was aliens' work, or aliens helped Hitler and stuff like that. So he's an expert in this field, but this guy just is a mess all the time, like terrible fake tan. His hair is just like always unkept and everything. Every time he talks, it's just bullcrap to me.
Yeah.
Even though he's saying the same thing that all the other hosts on the show are saying when he talks, it's like, nah, you can just turn that down.
Don't trust him because of appearance.
So I think it does matter, the appearance. If you're going to claim to be a professional, you should look and act professional.
Yeah. If you really know somebody that can overcome it. Has anybody read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry? In it, never mind, too long of a story. Makes the same point.
Oh, I just wanted to say, so my claim, or I guess of what I just saw, besides the brilliant comedy, would be what his point is universal. So, but he was using one side to give all the examples because it's current, right? But I believe you could have reversed it, whatever, how many years ago with Bush, right? If that, whoever was there, like it holds up. The question he's asking or what he's critiquing, I believe I would want to argue, is universal. It holds up on both sides.
We want proof, we want better evidence.
Yes. Well, I guess it's critiquing the political media, right? Rhetoric, I guess. That people are saying things like, if this is true, and then they'll talk for 3 hours about an if question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I just like, that's,
yeah.
I don't know what I'm saying.
No, so the content, so now you're talking about logos.
Yes.
Right? So we're talking about the content of his message, and we're saying, tell me how we can phrase this in a rhetorical claim about his logos. So he makes the point that there's serious claims, but we need proof. Give me a rhetorical claim about how that whole argument made his message more or less effective.
We can't judge information until we have it all.
Okay. Now that's basically a true point, but give me a claim in regarding John's presentation, like his logos made sense, or he made his point and he made it well. you know, something like that. He supported his claims well with evidence, for example, and with sound reasoning.
He showed that they were contradictory because they were claiming that they had the information because they were doing everything to get that information, but yet they knew nothing about it. They were not giving any details. It's just if questions.
Okay.
He basically was able to use their own words to condemn their own argument.
Yeah. So there would be a great logos. We're going to talk about the quality of his support, and one reason, and we're going to say he used, you know, their words to support his argument, and that made it effective. See, that's kind of like a rhetorical claim you could make, and then you could give an example of one of the quotes he used, and explain how that supports his point, kind of stuff. Let's say that is our claim for our rhetorical analysis paper. He used his opponent's words to support his point. And then we give one example. Can we find at least two more examples that are different? I mean, we can find multiple examples of the same exact thing, but in your rhetorical analysis, I also want you to find different types of evidence or you know, new claims to support the overall claim.
So in this example, is the overcall claim that his argument was that his argument was effective, and then several
and make your main claim a little more specific than that.
Yeah,
like
his argument was effective because
of the way he gave his evidence. How about that? And that leaves us free to say one way was he used their own words. Another way was, you know, there's probably several ways he presented his evidence that made it effective.
So one way was he turned their own credibility against them because he showed where they had exaggerated in the past.
Yeah. Okay, so you can use their claim, you can use their exaggerations. There's a little different type of evidence. Good.
I actually was going to say the same thing. Okay. The specific example was he was saying, you guys don't have a history of being like exaggerating, and then he showed a clip that the first 30 days or whatever it was. But you said that's just a little different. That's not different enough, right?
No, that's okay.
Oh,
I mean, to show.
Well, I think they're different things. One was he used their words to support his argument, and the other is that he used their words to basically delegitimize and discredit the people who were making those initial claims. And so they're two. It may be semantic, but it's
so you may have to clarify that to make it two. But here's a different kind of observation. He didn't just use one quote from some Republican. He played back to back like 6 people saying, if that were the case, if. So he used many of them. So there's another thing. And he used them back to back, so you got like this whole overwhelm of if, to really drive his point, like having a hammer until it's all the way, the nail's all the way in.
And it showed a history of if all last year, and then they said, well, had basically came to the assumption of, or asking question of, have they found the if yet? And then said, okay, this was on yesterday, and then showed where they were still looking for the if.
I want to ask one more question about this now. You're kind of, with the mention of Chavez led into this. Was his logos really bomb-proof? Was it completely solid?
No.
Definitely not. What did he leave out? What could you critique him on for that presentation?
He's just
Stuart.
Yeah. He's what?
He's mocking.
Mocking. So his style, his pathos.
Like even though he wears suit and nice on the national TV, he's just mocking the president of the United States, and with the behavior, he's mocking himself at the same time. So he's a hypocrite. So.
And did that make you believe him less?
I'm not American. I'm a South Korean. As a foreigner.
Yeah.
I don't understand the United States because in my country, if someone mocking just like that, our president, went to jail.
It's very offensive too. It's
like
disrespectful.
maybe all the Asian countries not mocking, the president, which is the president.
Yeah.
To me, I do understand that also this country has a freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Mocking everybody. So,
Yeah, and it's getting worse and worse. We're becoming more antagonistic.
yeah, so
Where-
to me, it's a kind of culture shock.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. So clearly, was Jon Stewart's audience Asians who have more respect?
No.
Or you other cultures who have more respect and kind of stuff? No.
America.
America, we don't have a lot of respect sometimes. Yeah, so yeah, good point. The point I wanted to ask about,
How was his argument before?
I just wanted to point out how some of his logic is a little flawed. Like when the newscasters asked Chavez what they're trying to cover up, and he just gave some random, see, we have to, he didn't answer that question. It doesn't mean he didn't know what, he couldn't have listed a few things they were trying to cover up, like politics or arms or whatever.
Politicians always do that, and it's so noxious.
It's annoying.
They get around the question by not answering it, by saying something else.
Yeah, and I don't know why he didn't answer the question. It's not like it's not kind of obvious, the things he's trying to point out. You know, in one of the earlier depositions of everybody in Clinton, it was amazing how incompetent the questioners were. They're totally incompetent. It's like they were all giving up. Have you ever heard of a rhetorical question?
Yes.
A rhetorical question is when you pretend to ask a question, but you're really making a speech. It's like all these politicians were getting up and giving these little speeches, this is horrible, it's worse than Watergate and everything combined. Instead of asking questions to actually get the answers they wanted. I was amazed at the incompetence, and Stuart covered that too.
I don't know if that's technically incompetence. Because they're politicians, so their goal is not necessarily to get the truth, but their goal is to get reelected and to advance their political ends and their political careers. And ever since the House Un-American Activities Committee, on which Nixon was a member before becoming vice president, it's become a tool, these hearings that are nationally televised, have become a tool to advance your own political career. And Nixon did the exact same thing. He wasn't searching for truth and asking questions to search for truth. He was asking rhetorical questions to make him look like he was a strong anti-communist and hard on communists, and it made him famous nationally, and that's how he got the vice presidency.
And according to scientific polls, whoever talks most in leadership position companies or anything, it makes them seem like your leader. So there's a lot of truth to that. But I think their goal really was to try and expose this, and they did a horrid job of it. But anyway, so Chavez kind of missed the ball, and Stewart kind of says, you don't know anything, and it seems like we have some really legitimate questions, and they're trying to ask them, and we're not getting answers. So there's more sides to the coin than just the ones he presented, even though his 1 point, had a lot of legitimacy and stuff. So the reason, I don't want to, this is fascinating conversations. We should all go like semester at sea so we can banter and talk about this stuff endlessly. It'd be awesome. But the point I wanted to make for your paper is it's okay to disagree with yourself. You can say, Stewart did a great job presenting his evidence, and it made him more credible or made it more effective. You could say it was great because he used their own words, he did it repeatedly, multiple times, he used humor in the way he presented it, and his mock reaction, yes, what? All that. But it wasn't perfect. It also he had a flaw in how he presented it. So you can show the good sides and the bad sides. Just multiple aspects of your main claim. Yes?
So is in the paper, can I be neutral between disagree and agree?
Yeah.
So I can go back and forth in the paper?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. You just like, that's what academic writing and academic thinking is all about. We're like, let's find the truth. It's not out to win. So you can say, well, on one hand, here are these points, but on the other hand, here are these points. There. Figure it out for yourself. That's okay. Yeah. But in your rhetorical analysis, make sure you have one clear claim, and make sure whatever other points you make, whether they are saying, see, this is good, see, this is good, except this one is bad, just make sure they're all clearly related to your first claim. Okay. Any other comments before we move to our next example that you're dying to say? Or should I say it this way? Any comments before we move to the pizza?
Yeah.
And
That's what I was
cookies?
hoping you'd say.
I was gonna see if any hands go down. Okay, go ahead.
I thought it was kind of interesting how right at the end he switched to a Republican who did not vote for a bill that would have passed that could have protected the American lives that were lost.
So he wasn't an example of the other guy that he put up. And yet he's a Republican that went over to Libya and tried to find stuff out, so he's kind of one of the ones deep into it. So.
But he did do the same thing. It was a joke in itself because he said if. That was the joke. If you know about comedy. The joke is that he did the same thing he was ranting against. But making a point at the same time.
That Stewart did an if?
Yes, he did an if. He said if. That's the whole joke. He was ranting on if that whole time. And then he did it. It's funny.
If you don't know more than that. Yeah, I didn't notice that.
No, his statement, that whole thing that he just said at the end, he did it with an if statement. He goes, if, right? Didn't he?
If what?
If this guy did this thing and it could have done all these things, the very last thing he said was all an if.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wasn't it?
I'll have to watch it again. I'm just remembering.
It was,
you have no
but
effing idea. That's the part I remember. If we're talking about response to chapters.
I think he was trying to reiterate that
Instead of,
it was
or
a
is it, you
two-way
have no
street.
effing ideas.
If the president did all these things, remember, if this this Republican did all these things too, it's the same. They
I remember now.
lost American lives for political gains. This guy did it, and the president did it. If all these things were
They
true,
all do it.
They all do
He's
it.
saying they all
I
do
think
it.
that's what he was saying.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I haven't always other.
I don't even know if I'm
right. But let's move on to some food, and then we'll go on to some more example stuff. So, thanks, you guys, whoever brought it, and.
Everywhere, and so the nation, or the notion that soldiers will have.
Okay, you guys. I'm gonna cut you guys off. Shouldn't be done.
Well, I'll respectfully disagree with you on that.
Okay. All right, welcome back to class.
What was this class? I thought this was divorce court.
Wait, weren't you having fun with that, man?
Oh, what?
Okay, so we're looking now at an example paper, and we're going to do a couple practice rhetorical analysis, and then we're going to look at an actual academic article and do the same thing. So can I have 3 volunteers to read for us? Paragraph at a time, okay? Catherine?
Or Kat, whichever
Or
you
Kat?
prefer.
Okay, thanks. And who's second reader? Okay, Dorothy, thanks, and third? Manuel. Okay, so
I'm Manuel.
oh, sorry, you're Manuel.
The white guy.
William, no,
Robert.
you're William. Is it Robert?
I go by David.
David. Okay, good. Let me make sure. Kate, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else go by something other than what I've got on the roll?
I go by boss. You can just call me boss.
All right, boss. Very good. I may do that sometimes. All right, so read a paragraph at a time, and I think we'll just read these 3. I think that's enough, and then I'll ask you all for a claim with 2 instances of evidence for logos and pathos and ethos, just to practice each one. All right? So, all right, go ahead.
A man walked into the airport like a football player leaving the stadium after a hard loss. He was defeated. While working in London, everything had turned upside down. Now Juan Man was returning home. But was it really home, he thought, realizing that there would be no one to greet him at home. Returning to Sydney, he found no one there to greet him with a needed hug, no one to fall into the arms of for a warm embrace after the taste of bitter cold of life. He felt like a tourist in his own home.
Finding a piece of cardboard, he wrote on it, "Free hugs," and went to the busiest place in Sydney and held a sign, "I am proud." 15 minutes passed by as he reassured himself that this was something that was worth doing and he was not going to give it up. The lady walked up to him, tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Sir, my dog passed today and this is the anniversary of my daughter's death. I need a hug." The lady's little face filled with sorrow as tears began to well up in the corners of her eyes. The man slowly dropped to one knee and hugged the lady. The woman was hunched over from the pressures of life. She had a large curve near the top of her back, making her much shorter than she otherwise would have been. With the embrace, the spirits of both were lifted and they walked away smiling, and with a light load of care and trouble.
This small act started the Free Hugs campaign. This campaign brings to light the importance of touch and the true joy that occurs when people are willing to change social norms. The power that touch has to change moods and influence health is far beyond most people's realization. It can be the catalyst to greater happiness and growth. In not utilizing the simple act of touch more often, we are missing something. Our understanding of the importance of touch for college students is especially lacking. We have, for some reason, dismissed the need for touch among college students and have dictated that once someone has passed childhood, the need for touch no longer applies. This belief makes no sense. We must learn and understand the needs for touch at all ages and break some of the taboos that control touch.
You guys need to hug it out.
Oh, we totally will.
Only if you join us, man. Give the hug, stand group hug, I'm down.
I want to be the baloney.
Before I ask you for the claim about logos or pathos or ethos, tell me, what do you think the purpose of this paper is overall?
Get people to understand the significance of touch.
Okay, so understand the significance of it, and then what's the, if there's an action purpose, do something about it, what do you think that'll be?
Break a social norm and do it.
Give people recognize the free hugs campaign.
Yeah. Okay, so actually implement that in their lives. All right, second question. Do you see any indication of a narrow audience so far?
College students.
College students, yeah, and maybe lonely ones, I don't know. Yeah, so he's talking to, so here in the first 3 paragraphs, you know, his introduction and then a story, and then it starts leading into the point he wants to make in the paper. You now know who he's writing to, at least you have a pretty good idea, and you know generally what he's talking about. And he hasn't said specifically like, go do it now, but you generally get the point. Okay, next. Someone give me a claim about the logos or pathos or ethos of this, what you've seen so far, and then we're going to stick to that subject until we make a couple more arguments to support it, and we'll do the other ones.
Pathos wise, it emotionally make you relate to that guy, painting the picture of him coming off the airport,
Yeah.
being lonely and sad.
Great. So somebody give me a nice overarching pathos claim that's related to what Manuel just said about.
They make us feel very bad for that man.
Okay, so like you
your
say.
heartstring? I don't know.
So feeling bad for him, is that the claim you want to make, or do you want to make one that's a little more broad and use that as a specific example to support it?
Coming home means to be greeted with a hug by somebody.
Okay, so that's talking about the topic itself. Do you want to mention? Do you want to claim something about the way it was presented in the paper?
They're making an appeal to our emotions.
Okay, so it makes an appeal to our emotions. Now let's get a little bit more specific than that. This is great. We're like kind of going back and forth. We're going to find just right balance. See, if you get too specific, then when you go and try and find instances to support that specific, maybe there's only one instance, right? So you want to go a little more broad so we can find a few instances that support that thing in different ways. But you don't want to go too broad, or there's no value in it. Yeah.
Physical touch can be emotionally uplifting.
So that's talking about the topic. Let's
I
talk
have no
about the
idea.
presentation of it. Yeah, this is important practice, because this is where, you know, we do all this talk and you're like, oh, it makes sense, but implementing it, suddenly it's not quite so clear. Until we practice, then it will be.
Not everyone will be as empathetic as the man was towards the lady in distress.
Okay, so that's kind of a commentary on the topic and on the story, right?
Yeah.
But you're kind of, now you're talking about outside the paper as well. So let's focus just on the presentation within the paper here.
I know, we haven't come up with one yet. Maybe the author uses real life experiences to illustrate his point on.
Okay, we're bouncing out, we're getting closer and farther, you know, we're kind of going back and forth a little bit. But so far we have one real life experience. So if that was our main claim, I mean, that's a good claim. They're all good claims, but if that was our claim, we'd only have one instance to prove it, and then we'd be done. And yet rhetorical analysis papers asking for multiple, like at least 3. So let's make it a little more general. Shall I give you some ideas on this? Okay, let's say I'm going to kind of synthesize all the things you said, and I'll give you one that I think will work. The author did a good job of creating an emotional attachment among his readers to this topic, which made it more effective. Now, you guys give me one instance at a time of how he gave that positive emotional connection to the topic. For example, he told this story about a lonely person.
Yeah, he told you more about this person came home and was defeated, and then introduced the name afterwards. And
Yeah.
that was kind of nice, because then you saw how he arrived there before you saw the person.
Okay, so let me think, I'm gonna analyze your comment right there and see how well it would play in rhetorical analysis. So, I said he made an emotional connection to his readers, and you said, he told someone's story.
Yeah, by introducing their hardships before introducing their name, he helped you become attached to the person before you had a name.
Okay, now, I'm just curious, does knowing his name matter? Juan, what's his name?
Juan Man.
Yeah, does it matter, does that,
One of
why
the
is that,
things
I
it
just don't understand why that's
does
important.
Because one man gives you a sense of what type of person he is.
Yeah.
You can guess what culture he's from, you can guess a lot
Juan,
of
so it
other
sounds
things.
Hispanic.
But rather than try to attach people onto the one man name, they actually try to attach it onto, because we've all been defeated, we've all had things that have not worked out for us.
Okay.
So rather than attaching you to, because some people will read that and go, oh, that doesn't apply to me, I'm not Hispanic.
Hispanics are much more touchy. I could never do that.
That's
Like
right.
that, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so some people that might all pop up in their brain, and it might get in the way of their message. A lot of people that probably wouldn't, but that's okay.
The author is universalizing it before giving us specifics.
Okay.
By saying, especially for an American audience has generally seen a football player leaving the stadium after a hard loss.
Yeah.
Has seen that defeat. And so they're universalizing this man's emotions for an American audience. So you can empathize with that before you learn any of the specifics.
And actually, I just realized his name's like in the third line here, so that's pretty early. So I want to point out a couple things. One is we've just made not one point, but two. We said we told a story we can relate to, okay? And then you can explain that for your evidence, just describe what he did and do the warrant. That's one point. The fact that we identified with him before we knew his name and knew more and pictured him or something as a certain race, that's a different point. So put those 2 points in 2 separate paragraphs. This is one of the 2 huge benefits of this rhetorical analysis paper, is I want you to learn to stop blending multiple ideas into one paragraph, because that's like super common, right? But after this, I want you to be very aware, like, oh, 2 ideas, that belongs in at least 2 different paragraphs, maybe more. Okay, so I just wanted to point out that was 2 there. And then, so if you like that, if you say, yeah, if he had said Juan Man, his name before, it would have changed the way I received it, then put it in your paper, that's fine. As long as you can prove that point. But if you think, let me ask you all, how much, if the name of the actual person, which I read at, Juan Man, what sounds like one man, I'm like, is that even a real name? Or is that, it really sounds like something you'd make up for John Doe. If this is the guy who invented free hugs, maybe that's true, I don't know. But how many of you would that turn you off or on or impede your reception of the message, knowing his name or not? How many say, yeah, that would have a significant impact?
If you knew they made up the name?
No.
Oh.
So let's say, right here, line 3, it says Juan Man. How many of you did you picture a Hispanic person and that made it harder for you or easier for you to relate to?
It affected how I felt about it.
Okay, and how many of you had no impact at all? Okay, so most people didn't. So one thing, by the way, I skipped one thing I was going to go over where it talks about how to make good claims, and one of them, I don't know if they list it, but I want to make it. When you make your claim, make sure that your claims are reasonable. Make sure you really believe in what you're claiming. If you don't, you need to adjust it to make it a strong claim, or take it out and use another one. So in this instance, there were a couple people who were affected by knowing the name. If it was like Bernstein Gulakov, or some, that was a terrible blending of different nationalities. But if it came out, you picture somebody, maybe, I can see how that can happen. But if you think it's not a really strong claim, in your rhetorical analysis paper, try and do your strongest claims. Ones that, that I'll say, yeah, I can see you're evaluating, come out with strong claims. So, all right, thanks. Anything else? Now again, so we've made 2 claims now talking about helping the readers create an emotional connection to this story or to the paper, to the topic. What's another way? So if the author had told 2 stories and he said, he told a personal story, and then you explain that. Then you say, he told another personal story. Okay, that's the same type of evidence. That only counts as 1. Now find one more different type of way he created that connection.
His use of words. For example, the man slowly dropped to one knee to hug the lady. It's evocative of that image. And the lady's old face filled with sorrow, and his tears began to well. He's creating images through his use of words, and that's an effective way of creating that emotional attachment.
Good. So by being descriptive, that's great. That's another good one.
I just want to clarify on something. So if you were to make a point saying he told this personal story, which I liked or didn't like or whatever, and then you said, then he told 3 more, and I think he didn't need to, the one was good enough. Can that be a separate point?
Yes, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can say, because that's an observation about quantity, not just the fact he did it. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Good. Fern.
So as far as him using descriptive words, do you need to mention all of them, all of the ones that you see, or can you just pick a few, like 3?
What do you think? Let's say you make the claim, emotional connection. Now you make another argument to support it. You used evocative, descriptive, visual words. How much do you need to support it until me reading your paper, I really get what you're talking about? How many instances do you think you need? 1? Is 1 enough?
No, 2 or 3.
Yeah, at least. Because once I get, if I get 3, I have an idea of the flavor of the style. I think that would be enough. Why not 10?
Really boring.
Yeah, you'd be like, okay, I get it, right? So as soon as, somewhere between that point of oh yeah, I really, yeah, yeah, I know, get on with it. You just got to figure out where that point is. So, okay, good question. Any other ways you created that positive, pathos, emotional connection? Yeah.
I think he took us back to childhood when we remembered being held and loved on, and then made us try to think, well, why do we not still have that now?
Uh-huh. Where does he do that?
In the last paragraph, for some reason, we dismissed the need for touch among college students, but dictated that once someone is past childhood, the need for touch no longer applies.
Okay. How many of you, with that half a sentence where it mentions the childhood need for touch, how many of you suddenly remembered being a child? Remember that? Okay, so that worked. And for the rest of you,
Having children.
or having, good point. Yeah, having children, you can kind of relate to it. Okay, and I just want to point out, that is a completely legitimate claim, but as you make that claim, you might say, it reminded me of it, but you might say, it's not like he drew it out visually like he did with the old woman and the free hugs loan the guy sign. He didn't say, how comforting it was when mother would, after you scraped your knees, she'd pick you up and hold you and suddenly all was well in the world. He didn't spell it out the same way. So you could, as you make that claim and kind of explain your little argument about it, go ahead and say, it was good to mention, if you really wanted to drive it home, you could have described it more. He didn't describe it at all, he just mentioned it. See what I mean? So as you make your case, just explain what you're talking about. Good. Any others?
Can I ask another question? I feel so stupid, seriously.
You're asking good questions.
Okay, so if you were to make that exact claim that you just said about how they could have explained it better about being touched as a child more, right?
Yep.
I actually heard, I listened to a lot of podcasts, so I don't know what it was, but there was something that happened a long time ago where they thought, they took all these orphans and put them in a crib, and then they wouldn't touch them. And they thought it was, I can't remember what they were trying to do, but it was horrible. It turned out really bad. Yeah. Now, would it be relevant to point this out, I know that this does support the fact that touch is important when you're young, because I know that if I have to go find this study, is that what you do there? Or is that not relevant to what
Great
you do?
question, but when you're going for a pure rhetorical analysis, no.
Okay.
Because now you're talking about the topic itself, and you're not talking about this author's presentation.
Okay.
Now you're going back to your outside context, which has nothing to do with his presentation. Even though, see, and that's one reason, I'm glad you asked that, to reinforce this again, because this is going to happen to a lot of you. You're going to want to start talking about the topic because it's interesting, you know, and you know stuff, and that's awesome. But just stick to analyzing his. Now, you could, on the other hand, you could say he failed to support that point with things that everybody knows, or if he did any research, he would have found this. So if you're talking about logos, saying he didn't back up his points, yeah, I think you could refer to things that he failed to put in. I think that would work. But if you're just saying, oh, I know that's so true because I know this other stuff. So it depends on how you.
You can also tie that back to the pathos and say that he is doing this to try and get you to get an emotional connection to the topic, but he's not doing it as well as he'd done previously, because look at the words he's using here compared to the words he's using in previous.
That'd be great.
paragraphs.
See what a complete argument you're making as you explain that one point in some depth. Yeah.
Yeah, and he mentions the campaign of the Free Hugs campaign, but he doesn't give any like notion to act upon it or to continue or why it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just
I think it's
explains
just
what
the
it
three
was.
And in case you don't know, yeah, this goes on. So yeah. It's like 10 page paper. There's this annotated bibliography. So yeah. Yeah. Although it is clear, I mean, right into his college student audience, most college students know what Free Hugs is, right? So if he was, not all apparently, they're doing podcasts about it, dang it. I did that for Halloween once. We did free hug things. And anyway, once, if he was writing to like people who aren't on YouTube a lot, he would need to explain what that is. Otherwise, people aren't going to get it if you want to make a point. But for this audience, you don't need to. Let's move on to, so there's pathos, great job. Give me a claim about ethos or logos.
Logos. 2 of his claims on logos were terrible.
Okay, so do you want to give me an overarching, like he made some bad logos claims? Or he did support some of his arguments, or why were they terrible? We'll find that balance between specific and general.
Well, the 2 claims I'm looking at are, but was it really home? So he asserts
Where was that?
In the first paragraph, 3rd line after, now one man was returning home, but was it really home? And that thought is, oh, so if you're not coming home to somebody who's going to give you a hug, you're not going home? Like, what about people who live alone?
That's how I feel every day. It's good.
You deserve it.
So this one is not, he's not really making a claim of whether it's home or not. Don't you think he's just trying to show how one man was feeling at this point?
Well, of course, but you could do it with good logical arguments.
But that's not what he's trying to do.
Like what?
Yeah,
He's trying to do something entirely different.
But emotions aren't logical.
Yeah. Sure they are.
I mean, it all depends on the definition of home. Is home a box where you put your stuff and sleep, or is it a place where you feel, a whole family, whatever thing. So, so you have a very analytical mind.
I do.
And that's great, but if you start going too deep, people are going to have a problem with your logos.
I know.
So you know that. But anyway, is there another one is it similar like that, or is there another claim that wasn't supported?
Oh, they have another one about social norms, but again, that's probably going to turn out to the same one where I just. There's a lot of different social norms. So saying that well, this is against social norms isn't necessarily true.
Especially for kind of generalization, huh?
Yeah, it's an overgeneralization. I mean, we if anybody who studied the love languages, there's at least 1/6 of us who like touch.
And yet,
that's not necessarily what he's saying. He's saying that it's a social norm of an intimate touch, which is what a hug is, with somebody that's a perfect stranger. And there might be a social taboo against that.
They say North Americans, at least not on the East Coast, maybe have about a 3-foot personal bubble. And when you start getting a little close, people get uncomfortable. What are you doing? Whereas Latin is maybe like more like a foot, if that. And Arabs, they don't have personal space. They have, if they're walking somewhere, the space in front of them is theirs. And if you cut a butt or you cut in front of a car, they get mad because that's their norm. So if his audience is like North American college students, then by saying that's taboo to touch, more than for his case, that's probably accurate. So, but yeah, it's a. But you know what? You could get away with this. You could say he speaks in generalizations. Here's one. Da, 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 da. But that's okay because it fits his audience. That's okay. You can point out the generalization, but it's appropriate.
So that would be a logos claim?
Yeah. Generalization, specific, support, evidence, all that kind of stuff. You could make that logos. Good. Okay, what's another one? Another logos one. Yeah.
Like the geographic locations and demographics, like of college students, don't change the support of his article. Like he could be talking to different audiences.
Okay. By the way, so if you're kind of analyzing the audience, I'm going to give you a preview. In case you don't get a perfect score on this first rhetorical analysis, which I wish I could say probably won't happen, but probably most of you won't get perfect scores. But if you really work at it and stuff, you will. You can. Or if you really plan it well, I should say, then you can. The second rhetorical analysis paper will not ask you to analyze logos, pathos, and ethos. There's a list of about 7 or 9, I forget, different rhetorical aspects, and you'll make a claim about one of those. You can make a claim about the purpose of the paper was this, and it was accomplished effectively. The audience was the paper was this. Here's how I know, and it was effective. It had bias, or it didn't, and now I proved my case. So, like when you mention audience, that's a great rhetorical claim, and it will fit the second rhetorical analysis paper. Do you want to turn that into a logos, pathos, or ethos one, or is that work perfectly as the audience?
Yeah, that was kind of the second one.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks for the opportunity to give you all a preview of that. Yes.
So just to be clear, for the rhetorical analysis one, we're doing either logos or pathos, not all three.
Correct.
Because that's
Just
okay.
one.
So this one, obviously, the easiest one here would be pathos, because there's so many examples of that, right?
I think so. At least if we're just doing the introduction, yeah.
Okay.
It's a story that makes you feel good. That was his whole purpose, to make you feel good,
Okay.
kind of
Thank you.
introduce his topic. Yeah.
Are we still on logos?
Yeah.
Okay. Did someone already say, like, when he claims the power that touch has to change moods and influence health is far beyond most people's realization? Like, is that, so logos is analyzing, how do we know that? Or how do we know that's true?
He just made a claim, yeah.
He's claimed it, but I don't know where he's coming from. I don't know where he got it.
Okay, so you can say he made some important claims and he did not support them yet.
So to improve that sentence, when he could have said something like power of touch has to change moods and affect most people's realization, as I described below. Would that, so we know that it's coming, would that have helped that? Or not really so much?
I think as long as he supports that claim coming up below, I don't think anyone's going to end that sentence and say, whatever. I think they'll expect that evidence. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It is funny when we start analyzing these things on purpose. You pick out things that someone who's just reading it would never notice. Almost anybody would never notice. But that's okay. So does he support that claim? He has 2 claims in there. It can change moods and influence health. That's one claim. Or 2, and then there's far beyond what most people realize. And then he goes on to support, catalyst to greater happiness.
That's another claim.
Yeah. So he doesn't go into a lot of depth, but it's the introduction, so we also assume that later in the paper he'll probably develop these ideas, and that's okay. Let me ask you some specific logos-related questions of things you can look for then. Was his organization easy to follow? Was it sensible, logical, effective? Like he started with the story. He didn't say, this paper is about touch, you should do it more often, without going to jail, it'd be appropriate. But, is it okay that he started with the story instead of a narrative intro, instead of a straight to the point?
It'll accomplish his goal, like, then, yeah.
Yeah. Got your interest, a nice little attachment, you feel good, you'll probably keep reading. And it kind of introduced his idea as well. So when he actually comes out and says it, it doesn't sound boring because it's tied to that story. So you could talk about organization or, strategy, and strategy is one of the other ones for next week, by the way. So you could say the organization was effective. First, it caught attention and introduced the idea. And what about the paragraph breaks? Were those good places to break the paragraph? Those are a little bit long paragraphs. If this was double spaced, that'd be a long time in one paragraph.
The second one just feels really long.
It is. So look in the second paragraph and find a good spot where it starts on a kind of a new idea, and tell me where a good place to break that paragraph would be.
Personally, a lady walked up to him.
Yeah, that's where I would break it to, right after he was gonna give up, and break it there.
Great. That'd be great, because it's from him drawing the sign to the lady walking up and tapping. Those are kind of different ideas. Where you break your paragraphs is very flexible. The main idea is break it around ideas, so each idea, okay? Well, these are related, because this is all in the same story. You could put it in the same, it's not illegal to put those in the same paragraph, but what happens with paragraphs is your readers read it, and they take all this information in, and they hold it in their RAM, in their memory, right? And they keep it processing, and it's like taking a huge bite of pizza. You have to chew it all, and at the end of the paragraph, you swallow and start over. So you make big paragraphs, and people are going to choke. It's harder for them to remember. Your opinion about the logos or pathos or ethos of the article that you read, the article that you find, you're going to say, I thought they did good at this or bad at this. I thought this was effective or this was ineffective. And then you will prove your opinion. See, they did this. That made it good. They did this. That also made it good. Yeah.
Do we have to cite that?
It says you're all, in this case, since you're just going from one paper, no, but do add a permalink to give credit to what you're talking about. Yeah, it'll be obvious now. Let's jump on to ethos. Do you know anything about the person who wrote this paper? What clues do you have about the person who wrote this paper?
They might be part of the Free Hugs campaign.
Okay, you might have a vested interest, something like that.
They might
he's
be
going
a
to promote
college
it.
student.
Yeah. What?
They might be a college student or someone that works at a college.
Yeah, might be a college student, either because he's identifying and writing to them, or because this paper got turned into me last semester, actually. So good.
With the detail.
What?
With the detail, either the person talked to one man or was one man.
Good. Yeah, or maybe watched him tell his story and repeating it.
That's right.
Or maybe took some liberties and described it a little more.
Yep.
Yeah, good point. What else do you know about him?
Or
Well,
her.
A pervert?
No, her.
Because he likes
said
hugs,
or
he
her.
must be a pervert.
Yeah, touch is bad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I just said or her.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't.
Good. Yeah, because we don't know. Do you think this is a nice person who wrote this paper? Or is it really serious? Cold.
Probably a warm person.
Probably somebody who's in favor of hugs. Maybe it's a cold person who's like, please, someone break me out of my shell. I don't know.
Likes to describe things.
Yeah, so the way he describes it kind of gives you sort of an impression of who he is.
Yeah.
I'll give it away. Yeah, so
I
you
was
don't
saying
know.
we should see the name, like the author, that would help us.
Okay, let's show you the name. Anonymous. I bet you've heard of him.
Damn it.
He's
I did it a
prolific.
lot.
I would tell you, except for each other's anonymous. So just
one
keep
bit.
in mind. Yeah, so ethos seems like a nice enough guy, I guess, or descriptive enough, or smarter than that. I don't know. We don't have a lot to go on with ethos here, right?
I think they're needy.
Yeah, could be. See, so maybe our overarching claim for ethos, let me give you the only two ways I can think of to do a good one based on these first 3 paragraphs. Number 1, the author does not give many clues as to who he is, what he's like. And then we can say, point number 1, he tells stories about other people, but not about him. But the very fact that he chose this story to tell about and chose this topic to write about gives us a clue that maybe he's at least in favor of more touch. Second, the way he describes things, he describes things. What does that tell us about it? I'm not sure, but okay, yeah, this is going to be a weak paper. Talking about ethos.
Well, just from the first 3 paragraphs.
Yes, exactly. Yes, with more, you do find out more information, a little bit more. So here's the other strategy if you were going to talk about ethos. You could say, he doesn't have terrible ethos. There was no huge bias, there wasn't, he wasn't getting overbearing in the story, just descriptive, had good grammar, except for he did, there was extra space between that period right there. Pretty good editing overall.
So is that because the paper had it, or because of the cut and paste error?
I did just cut and paste, so that it wouldn't insert that space, so yeah.
Hopefully not.
Although the formatting did screw up when I cut and pasted on it. Like it was double spaced, I'm sure. So you could just say things, like we don't know very much about it, and then show, these are the only things we know. We know this, we know that, we know that. And we don't know this, that. So you could build one on
what you don't know.
On what you don't know. You could make a claim and prove it that we don't know that much. Yeah.
So I've tried to research the logos, pathos, and ethos on my own since I've been really confident. So logos is appealing to the logic of your reader.
Yeah,
Pathos is
and
the emotion.
let me say about it's like the logic, but a little bit broader. You could say it's about the message itself. So it can include the structure, the arguments, the evidence and support, and warrants, just the way he presents all the ideas, the message itself.
Okay.
Because you can have flawed logic but good organization. See, they're good. Yep.
Okay, and then pathos is appealing to the emotion, right?
Yes.
So what I believe of ethos is different than what I'm hearing here. So will you tell me what ethos?
Pathos is emotion.
Pathos is emotion, right?
Okay.
And ethos is.
A lot of people define ethos as credibility of the author.
Okay.
And that's the biggest part, that's the most famous part. But it's also anything else we know or gather about the author or our impression of the author that influences the way we receive the message. So if you read an article about psychology in the Daily Herald, you might say, oh, that's interesting, this person thinks they know what they're doing. But if you read about that same article in a peer-reviewed, the APA journal, you're like, well, this person obviously knows because it was peer-edited and these real experts published it. So see, that's something that you could know about the author or about the article, like where it was published, or yeah.
So is it kind of what you're saying, like if you were doing this to a 7th grader, right, they don't have a real professional ethos, but they might have the way that they wrote it has its own ethos.
Yes.
They were respectful, they covered all of the different points of views,
Correct.
or you felt, or whatever, or they didn't, or whatever. Is that, okay.
Exactly right. Got a good example last semester. One of the papers when it was first being brainstormed was about pornography, and it started to tell this story about this kid who was 10 who first got introduced to it by his friend, and it was kind of written in the voice of this 10-year-old. And the class all listened to it and we're like, that's really good. I wonder if you should write your whole paper in that voice. That would have been harder. You didn't in the end, but yeah, you could, because it did have that innocent sense about it, and so that could be part of the ethos. Yeah. Have you had enough of this paper? Are you curious how it evolves? Should I scroll down super fast and tell you?
Everyone hugs.
Did everyone in the class who read that?
Spoiler
alert!
He gave
was it a call to action that was answered?
He gave an oral presentation of it, and when we have more time in class, we do that toward the end of class. And afterward, there was some hugging, but it wasn't the whole class. Got at least a third of them to participate. So
Oh.
there were a few people with guts, with some courage.
That didn't, right? The guts, right?
Yeah. It broke that social norm. All right, let's then look at a real, actual academic article. This is not a terribly dense one, so it'll be fairly easy to do. 5 years later, Maryland adjuncts tell us again who they are and what they want. Do you know what an adjunct is?
You.
Yeah, it's your super underpaid teacher with no benefits and stuff, but they like teaching anyway, and so they do until they find an awesome career that pays 3 times more, and they go do that for a while, and then maybe they come back and teach again. Been there a few
Or
times.
they go to school and teach.
Yeah, yeah, or like if you're, yeah, TA, you know, RA, that's different too, but yeah, often they do.
I still don't know. Is it someone that hasn't hit tenure yet,
Yes.
or are they still lower?
Yeah.
Or maybe not even on a tenure track.
Right.
That's a pretty good position.
So there's adjunct, and the word adjunct means just added on, additional, and they hire a lot of people to, like, tenure track people, they don't typically teach 1010 and 2010 because they have more fun, interesting, awesome classes to teach that we almost never get to. And so it depends how you hire on, because you can be adjunct, then there's some positions like lecturer, and they created a few of these positions where you actually get some office space to share, get paid better and get some benefits, and you teach one more class than we do. They just teach 3 per semester, otherwise we'll be full-time, then we'll need benefits and stuff. And then you can also get hired on as, you know, there's like 3 levels of professor, and I don't think you can do that with or without tenure track. Yeah, it's not necessarily tenure track, and they're getting away from that more and more because they want to save the money.
There's no one lower.
Yes, there's no one lower than adjunct except.
For students.
Yeah, I guess so.
Graduate, student instructor.
Yeah, I got paid better as a TA than I do as a adjunct. And I got an office. My first university office, I was like, I have arrived. I got a fish tank and a couch. My second university office for student government, I was like, I don't have time. I put up on a poster. Anyway, so this is an article about, you know, researching what's going on with that. And before I actually get to the article, tell me something about ethos based on just what you see here on this information page.
It's in a peer-reviewed journal, the Journal of Continuing Higher Education.
Good.
And you can tell because it's volumed.
Good. I was just going to ask that. So it says journal in it, and it's not Ladies Home Journal, so you know that's one good sign. Volume. If this page number was like 600 or something, especially, tells you it's 11 pages long.
It's peer reviewed.
How do you know it's peer reviewed? Oh, it says yes. Yes. Smart, because I can read. Okay. Tell me more about the ethos there.
It's going to have 22 references.
Great.
It's over 5 pages.
Yeah. It's still 11 pages.
Like a lot of
What
people
about
available.
Yeah, multiple authors. So that's another good sign.
It's also pretty recent. It was put it in March in 2013. Which
Great.
is also good.
Yeah. And that matters with topics like this that change.
So this is very easy. We're talking about the ethos here, right?
Yeah.
So this would apply to any article. So if we just wanted to get this done, and we had the article.
That's what really matters.
Yeah, that's extremely easy to analyze information like that. And the support is obvious.
Yes. Yes, so this could be good.
I'm liking ethos more and more. This is really good.
Let me ask you a hypothetical that may not be so hypothetical if we don't have this discussion question. If you read a rhetorical analysis that says, you know, I reviewed this article and the ethos was spectacular. It was in a peer-reviewed journal. It had multiple authors. It was 11 whole pages long. It was peer-reviewed, and it was recent. Amen.
I would give that person an A.
Are you like, oh, obviously it had good ethos. Are you satisfied?
That amen had a lot of insight.
Yeah, it was supposed to be BYU maybe, right?
I'd want to hear more about the references. Who did they quote?
Okay.
Where were they just quoting Time magazine?
And what do they talk about? Because sometimes even in great peer-reviewed articles written by multiple people, there's bias and there's sarcasm or something. So yeah, so you do need to be thorough enough in the article as well. But these are great, distinct, every single thing you guys pointed out here is a distinct way to support a claim of good ethos. A distinct little example. So those are all legit, could be used.
But you can't really write a paper off that, right?
No.
Oh.
No. I'd be like, and what about the article?
It seems like a paragraph of an essay.
It could be one topic. If there were 3 supports, this could be one. The author was well credentialed or something, and then just use all of that information in it.
Well, so if you're going to use all these different quotes about ethos, your overarching one should be the ethos was credible and that made it more effective. That's your big main claim. And then I want, for every other claim, please, separate paragraph for every single one. So say multiple authors and say, see, here are the authors. There's your evidence to support that claim. And say, by having multiple authors, it shows that it was collaborative and had, 2 heads are better than 1 and 5 are better than 2. And so that, and then next paragraph, it was published in the Journal of Continuing Higher Education, which is
very
itself.
reputable.
Yeah. Spell that out. So paragraph each one.
But ultimately, shouldn't all of those things we're currently discussing be like required for any article that we choose to do a rhetorical analysis of?
Yeah.
And
well,
as such, like,
it's like that's a given.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me give a couple answers, fine-tune answers. That you don't always have to have multiple authors and stuff, but yeah, in general, this kind of stuff should apply because you should have strictly academic, no New York Times articles, like really academic article. And so it kind of is a given, but since I just want to see that you're aware of this stuff, and if you say it was an academic journal article, multiple authors, etc., I'm like, good, you're aware of that. Good, you're aware of that. That's fine. As long as you click on the article and talk about that too.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah. Because I just want to see your analyzing muscle.
But it is legitimate to find one that doesn't have it and then address it failed because it didn't have all those things. Isn't that the reverse of doing a good article?
Yes, sure.
Oh, okay.
In fact, you could say, they were very balanced in their speaking, but it was published in the Ladies' Home Journal. So you could show the pros and the cons of it, just as long as it has to do with your overarching claim, your main claim. Except for the Ladies' Home Journal. Shouldn't be there. Okay, let's read a few paragraphs of this then.
Ooh, we're going to do the abstract.
And by the way, and you can look at this and you can say, look at that boring format that again establishes probability of academic article, which you could use. And we're going to skip the abstract actually. And I need a volunteer to read that paragraph.
Can you make the text bigger?
I was just thinking the same thing.
Because it's just a little bit.
Zoom in the middle.
Thanks. It was way behind me there, I couldn't see it.
The text.
I wish I could
the
scroll
font
at
is
that
just
top
terrible.
Yeah, the font is
What I
the worst.
wouldn't do for Comic Sans right now.
Here's what we'll do.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Copy.
Be right that way.
Probably have that one second. Word on here.
Way to go.
Thanks. Should we get rid of the bold, or is that just the font face? Okay, that's better. All right, sorry about the line breaks. Let me just change our margins really quick. There, now all fits. Okay. A reader, please. Thanks. I'll make that bigger more, right?
Yeah. I brought my glasses, so I think I'll be okay. How much do you want me to read?
That whole paragraph.
Okay.
Is that big enough?
Yeah. Without adjunct faculty, community colleges and other institutions in the state of Maryland cannot fulfill their educational missions. By head count, adjunct faculty in Maryland community colleges accounted for 70% of total reported faculty in 2010, the Maryland Higher Education Commission data book. Maryland's four-year public institution adjunct faculty varies from 22.4% at Morgan State University to 90.2% at University of Maryland University College. Higher education, educators across the United States will recognize this pattern. In 2002, concerned Maryland higher educational professionals formed an affinity group, the Maryland Consortium for Adjunct Faculty Professional Development, or MCAPD, whose goals are to involve 2- and 4-year Maryland institutions of higher education in collaborative efforts to provide professional development for all adjunct faculty, credit and non-credit, and share best practices and resources for professional development for adjunct faculty and administrators of adjuncts. Skip that. Through an annual day-long professional development conference, MCAPD extends its mission: foster comprehensive and innovative adjunct faculty development to improve teaching and enhance student learning.
Who knows what the purpose of this article is already? So far, it's kind of like talking about the adjunct situation and some stuff that they did. So it's not really telling us
super clear, right?
Not really, yeah, not telling us the information.
The value of adjunct
Okay. What?
advocating the value and significance of their contribution.
Yeah, so that's kind of implied,
Or
isn't it?
it's-
Because they're looking into that stuff, but we just don't know where they're gonna take it yet.
Or it's just trashing on the school system for having so many adjuncts and not having enough teachers.
Yeah, so we really don't know where it's going yet. And that's okay, because, academic articles like this, they're giving their background, it's logical, they're not here to entertain you with an adjunct came home from his low-paying job, or wasn't really home,
Nobody would
His
He held up
batteries.
the sign, free food, question mark, anyone? He stood there for hours, finally a hunched-old woman.
His batteries were all
My dog
empty.
died, you can have it.
Like his soul.
Yes.
It's like
This will feed you for
Yeah, so he doesn't have to have all this pathos stuff going on. So that's okay, but let's read a little more. So we read down to the bottom of this paragraph, it ends right there. Anybody?
I'll go.
Thanks.
In 2006, members of the MCAPD published the results of a survey conducted with adjunct faculty throughout Maryland. The survey sought to clarify what the part-time teaching faculty in the state wanted regarding professional development opportunities. The results of that study in the 2004-2005 academic year were based on the responses of 810 respondents and were discussed in Martinac, Carlson, Faircloth, and Witcher in 2006. The results of the 2006 survey guided MCAPD's focus on providing at least one yearly cost-effective statewide professional development conference designed specifically for adjunct faculty members in Maryland. Attendee responses at the 5 annual conferences have helped us identify topics that seem to be most popular. This information has aided faculty training coordinators and college administrators engaged in the practice of faculty professional development to affirm that they are moving in the right direction.
Thanks. How much do you comprehend of that paragraph? 50%? Who understood at least half of that information? it's not hard read, it's not, difficult language at all. It's just giving all this background with no specific information, right? So but what they do, they're not telling us that stuff yet, so it's just, and I've asked you that question just to remind you that with academic articles, after you've skimmed and crossed out the first time, you may have to read them multiple times to get it to really sink in. Now, someone who's really familiar with this, they'll read that once and they'll totally get it. But give yourself time for that, to like read over a couple times and annotate, and to where it can really kind of sink in.
Can I make a guess because I'm so lost?
Sure.
Is it saying that they're trying to figure what adjuncts want at a conference? They're asking them questions or something?
Yeah, they had some kind of day long, everyone got together and talked about it. Probably some people have been doing some kind of research and presented it. I don't know, we'll find out.
Okay, I just didn't know if I was way off or...
Yeah, that's it. It's just saying, we got together to talk about this issue and see where we're heading and see what
And
to do
after
next.
5 years, we were able to find the most common or most popular topics for adjunct teachers to learn so they can apply their profession to the students that they have.
Okay, I wasn't paying attention. Is that in there?
Yeah, pretty much they said that they had a survey in 2006, and based on that survey, they decided to have annual conferences for adjunct professors. And after 5 conferences, they've compiled what was most valuable for those adjunct professors, what topics were most valuable in those.
Well, most popular, we don't know. What they're
Towards professional development.
Okay.
But they're not describing what all entailed in professional development, like of the adjuncts becoming like higher professors, or?
Well, they're saying that the information has helped the training coordinators at the universities and also helped the college administrators in gaining the practice of faculty professional development. But that doesn't say anything about what happened to the adjuncts or anything else. It just says that this information was disseminated to these people and they did stuff with it.
Yeah, and we assume that what they did in more detail is coming up.
Correct.
In the article, right? Yeah, and they probably won't define professional development because they probably assume readers know, because that's a big term and stuff. All right, I won't make you read that third paragraph because it's pretty much like these first two still. But I will make you tell me a claim about ethos now to add on to those other brilliant ones you did so quickly before. Yeah.
They actually pulled in a lot of different, they quoted a lot of different articles already.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and they've compiled their information from lots of different sources. They mentioned one in 2006, they mentioned one in the previous one, and I think they mentioned another one a little bit later, but they're talking about like credible sources that they pulled their information from.
Good. So they're thorough, aren't they?
Yeah, at least as far as we can tell. We haven't
Right.
seen the other part of it, and maybe they're just pulling ones that are biased to them. But.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Related to that, all of the things that they seem to be pulling sources from come from the Maryland Consortium for Adjunct Faculty Professor Development.
Okay, so within
like,
this
they're,
little
they're,
group.
yeah, so they're pulling a lot of different studies performed by different people, but all under the aegis of the MCAFPD. So.
Very good.
Yeah, they're filtering that information to come up with the best way to present their case, what they want.
Okay, and they're telling you this, so they're forthright with what they're doing,
Yeah,
telling all their
they're very
background in
honest about
detail. Yeah. It's like you might get some research study, and if there's 6 pages telling about here's our research methods, and we asked this age specifically after lunch of these kids, and here's one of the weaknesses, and so telling all this information that has nothing to do with their actual results, that can build ethos, because they're giving you the whole, it's like open source. It's like, let's give you the whole picture so you can use it best, so you know where we're coming from. So, yeah, great. Anything else you'd say about their ethos here? How intelligent do they seem, the authors?
They're not writing to a 3rd grade education.
No. And how would you prove that point?
Most books in general written to a 3rd grade education, including some college books. This, however, is using a lot of, not necessarily larger words, but they're using words that are specific to hit specific points.
Okay.
Like different words conjure different images and also are used in different contexts. Like, for example, crenellations is a perfect word to describe what a crenellation is, but
that's true.
That's right. Like it,
well,
but
not
other
described,
words.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it conjures the image if you know what a crenellation is, you're like,
It's precise.
Yeah, and the wording here is precise. It is very concise, it's very short, it's saying a lot in a really, really tiny space, and it's very specific.
Okay, and I want to make a little point about this. How many of you think when you write papers, if you use bigger words, you seem smarter and you get better grades?
It's about clarity.
Yeah, it's about precision. So using bigger words, the purpose is to be more clear. And I just want to point out that I don't think any of you are probably like this. If you write your paper and then use the thesaurus to get a bigger word and just plug it in there, if you're not really familiar with that word you're going to use, you probably make yourself, it probably reduces clarity, reduces precision, and you probably look dumber instead of smarter, because English is really tricky with the prepositions we append. You know, like I am interested in, I'm concerned about. And sometimes when you switch that word, if you don't switch the preposition, then it's kind of wrong, it's kind of off. Every once a year or so, I'll get a student who it's so hard for me to say, look, you're using these big words, it's backfiring, sometimes I never get through to them, but it's a valuable point.
It's like I brought my CPU to him so he could fix it.
What's the CPU? Is that what you're saying?
Well, people use the term CPU, which is this tiny chip inside your computer, to refer to the computer itself. So it's like, I brought my CPU. Can you fix my CPU for me?
They're using the terminology.
Yeah, and they're trying to use technical terms that it's not.
That's also
Core i3. No, it's really
That's also like it's a divisive language to use a part of the whole to describe the entire whole. That's actually part of the English language and part of a lot
What's
of different
another
languages.
example?
Another example of that.
My bones ache.
That's okay. I thought you might have
Not off the top of my head.
some off. Okay.
But that's a good example.
Something I'm noticing again this semester, by the way, which often happens, is my night class students. I get a lot of really smart people who know a lot of stuff. It's cool. I just thought you had to build.
Trying to bury Caesar, not to praise him. He says that at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So he's trying to bring the audience in. By appealing to them as friends, Romans, and countrymen.
Yeah.
Let me hear, I come to bury Caesar, not praise him. Then he gives a speech praising Caesar.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because if you start out praising, you're like, oh, great.
If he starts praising Caesar, he's going to inflame the passions of the supporters of Caesar, but he's going to turn off, the people who were against Caesar.
Yeah.
So.
And if you say, I've come to bury him, even if you go into the praise, they're still like, okay, tell us about the bury. They're patient. Yeah, good example. Let's add that to your rhetorical analysis. I want one reference to Shakespeare. Yeah.
Shakespeare's English playwright who wrote more plays than he could shoot a spear.
Shoot a spear. Nice. So, how good of a hold on rhetorical analysis? Are you ready to write your rhetorical analysis paper? You get it? So.
I think I get it so much I don't have to do it.
Awesome. It's not going to play well for your
Now what you should do is you should write a paper about that and then claim and then support your arguments.
I'm just kidding, dude. I have no idea.
So in general, since you've done a billion of these papers,
What?
great, since you've graded a billion of these papers, when people are doing a rhetorical analysis on academic or whatever, are they usually leaning toward ethos?
No, they're distributed quite well.
Really?
Yeah, it really depends on your article and what stands out to you best. Ethos, like you guys all pointed out, has several easy ones you can use, but sometimes in the writing itself, it's hard to find more sense of the author in it, of their fairness or thoroughness or whatever. Or maybe there's just something so pathos that stands out that they want to write about that. So yeah, there's a good variety. So annotate well, and whatever you have most of, make that trump.
I did that.
You write about that. As a reminder, next time the rhetorical analysis 1 is due, is due next time, but it's not due in class. Well, it sort of is.
Because we're gonna peer review it in class, aren't we?
Yes, so finish the paper. Don't just bring a draft to class. Bring a finished paper so you can get some quality feedback. And then it'll be due the next day, I think. Yeah.
Are we doing a rhetorical analysis on the permalink that we sent you, or can it be on anything?
It is going to be on an academic article related to your final paper. So it could be your permalink one, but if you find another one for your paper that you'd rather do that. That's one. Yeah.
Does the article that you're rhetorically analyzing need to be certain length? 5, 10 pages?
Yeah, minimum 5 pages, and truly academic, like in a journal kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're bringing a hard copy of our finished draft, and making the changes after the peer review and submitting that.
Yes.
So it's due Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's due sometime Saturday. And you'll notice on the calendar it says like it's in the same box, May 17th peer review, in the same box, May 18th rhetorical analysis.
Okay.
Since we meet once a week, that's the only way to make any good use of peer review.
So is it going to be due like Saturday by midnight?
I think so. I think it's by midnight.
So if we have to do the second analysis, because we screwed so back out on the first, are we gonna find that out before the 24th when the second one's due?
Yes, I'll try and grade those as quickly as I can.
So we're gonna have more than a day to write the second one if we have to, okay.
Yeah. In fact, the second one I think is due in class, or by class.
Which was what I was concerned about, because if it's,
Yeah.
6 days after the other one, then we haven't met in class, but then the next one's due, and we submitted the first one 6 days before.
I'll try and get them all graded by Monday.
And everybody will do so fabulously that none of us will have to do the second report.
I would love that. Yeah, if you have, and here's all it takes to have a 25-point rhetorical analysis number 1. Clear, reasonable claim that's about logos or pathos or ethos, and then at least 3 good points that each one clearly supports that big claim, different instances, and each one of those is a clear argument, a claim, support, and warrant, actually spelled out, without evidence first. Evidence is not first. And that's 25 points. That's if it's really works. So, yeah.
When we write an analysis of an essay like this, do we have to have like a source, or how do we say the name of the essay? Do we put that in there? Like, I am analyzing this essay by so-and-so. Is there like a format for that? Or you just don't say it?
And I'm not too worried about writing it super nicely,
Okay.
Some people, sometimes they'll do like a little introductory. I wrote, this is a rhetorical analysis of this article, named this by these people.
Sure, so they're getting...
So they create an
whatever. Yeah, you could do that if you want to, if you feel bad, if you like, it's not complete without it. Or you could simply say, the authors of the article I'm analyzing did a great job with pathos and by making a connection to the reader, which made it more effective. And then, just write about it, your points, straight to the point, and then you'll have your little bibliography, or at least a permalink, to the article to give credit. You don't have to state it in your writing. So
would there be a little bibliography at the end?
Well, if you quote anything from or paraphrase whatever, then you have to cite it at the end.
Okay.
But I'm not going to force you to do like MLA or AP style on this one. I'm not worried about that yet.
Okay.
So.
But if we quote the article, we need to source it.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, let me ask you this. Let me ask you to do this. At least tell the author's names, the article name, the publication name, and a permalink. Either do MLA or AP style, or give me those things. Author, article, publication, and permalink. Because that's plenty to give credit, so you're not plagiarizing. And I can look it up if I want to.
Great. Thank you.
And I can look at the publication and probably quickly verify that you did do it. Oh, another thing, page count, like how many pages was the article? Tell me that. So I can quickly, so I don't have to wonder, was it 5 pages or not? So
So the article we're reading is 5 pages, not our analysis that we're writing?
Right, because your analysis should be 20 to 30 pages. Yeah, the article you're analyzing should be a minimum of 5.
I was so confused for a minute, because you're like, I don't give page counts. I'm like, dude.
Font size.
5 pages for each page.
I can tell you about the kind of day that I have had.
Yeah.
Okay, so 5-page article, gotcha.
Yeah.
Whew. I feel much better about things now. Thank you.
My pleasure. Any other questions while I glance at what else we have to do?
The Pentagon was an example of the part of the whole you can use to describe the whole. So if you're going to describe the American military, you can say, or the military-industrial complex, you can say, today the Pentagon
Or the
released
White
a
House.
statement.
Yeah.
Or the White House is emblematic of the government as a
Federal
whole,
government.
or just even the executive branch of the government.
Yeah.
So like,
Okay, very good.
example.
Yes.
Of rhetorical analysis 1, what's the average length from your students? Would you say?
Less than 2 pages. Yeah. Some people can maybe pull it off. Well, double space, no, 1 page probably isn't enough. So yeah, about 2 pages, double space.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes, I was choosing between them all.
Anything that will help us on the rhetorical analysis? Or is this the information
I'd say more.
Okay, here's the only thing left, because we've discussed this as much as we can discuss it tonight, right? We've done examples, your heads will explode, we can do too much more. Or
You could talk about how to attack an argument.
And
Oh, I just realized what that reminded me, thanks.
And therefore,
smaller size.
This is a really useful page, so we're going to read over this. Okay, somebody read me line 1. Sorry, I'll read line 1 and then I'm going to ask for bullet point readers. Claims, definition. A claim states your position on the issue you have chosen to write about. See how it says your opinion? Claims are opinions. So sometimes we get confused, we think like, but it's a fact. No, it's an opinion. Even facts, when you state them, it becomes an opinion. It's your opinion that that is a fact in the real world, kind of stuff. So in case everybody was going to get hung up on that. Okay, sorry to read, bullet point number 1. Fern.
A good claim is not obvious. Why not bother proving a point nobody could disagree with?
Okay, get it? Somebody tell me an obvious claim.
The sky is blue.
The sky is blue. Now, if you're writing a poem, that's probably okay. The sky is blue. I miss you.
I'll end better.
Yeah,
Next time.
okay. But generally, that's that reminds me of one way that junior high school students often start their paper. They want to introduce. I can write a paper about Utah. So they say something about Utah, introduce it, and then start talking about it. And sometimes they say something, I call it the painfully obvious. Utah is a state. Okay. So obvious. Start out with something more interesting than that. Okay. Utah is a state of mind. Okay. Give some people some new information. Don't just waste your time with really obvious things.
It's basically a manifestation.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Starting to read bullet point number 2. Allison.
A good claim is engaging. Consider your audience's attention span. Make interesting claims which point out new ideas. Teach the reader something new.
So that overlaps with what we were just saying, right? Remember, think of your audience, what would capture their interest, you know, and say something like that. Okay, number 3. Thanks.
A good claim is not overly vague. Dragging enormous issues whole, it leads only to generalization and vague assertions. Refrain from making a book-sized claim.
Okay. When I was doing some research on, or when I was preparing a lesson a while ago for introductions, I just Googled, you know, good introductions to make sure I wasn't missing anything. And one thing I found a lot of teachers complaining about is the super generalized intro statement. Instead of the Utah is a state, you know, painfully obvious, it would be like, since the beginning of time, prostitution has been a problem among, you know, whatever. So if you ever start a paper from the beginning of time, don't. Okay.
What are you talking about the beginning of time?
What?
Never mind.
Anyway, okay, next bullet point, leader. Thanks.
A good claim is logical. It emerges from a reasonable consideration of evidence. Note, this does not mean that evidence has only one logical interpretation. Reasonable people often disagree.
Good. So, yeah, pretty straightforward. I can't think of a funny example off the top of my head. So, leader for the next one.
I can actually think of a really good one. There's a philosopher by the name of Karl Popper, and he was really famous for the idea that scientific makes falsifiable claims. And one of his famous quotes is that if the evidence only leads to one interpretation, either you don't understand the question or you don't understand the evidence.
Good. I've heard that before too, yeah. So, oversimplifying. Okay, great. Next one, reader, thanks.
A good claim is debatable. Claims that are purely factual and claims that are only opinion fail this requirement.
Okay, so like the sky is blue, there's some overlap, it's too obvious or whatever like that. So when you're writing a paper, if you're just telling really, one side of things, it's useful, like, you go to IKEA, buy a shelf, they're like, first lay this side on the floor, because it's not debatable, just do it, right? But that's just instruction manual, that's not interesting paper to make a good claim. Okay, and last bullet point, reader. Thanks. Connor.
A good claim is, did we already read that? It's debatable.
Oh, sorry, next one down, yeah.
Yeah, typical.
A good claim is debatable. Claims that are...
Sorry, read the next one.
Yeah. I'm retarded, sorry. A good claim is typically hypotactic. It uses subordinate clauses. Simple sentences rarely comprehend enough complexity to do justice to a well-conceived opinion.
Within this class, we have such long class periods, it runs together. But we talked about starting a sentence with a subordinate clause. Yeah, that was my last night class. So do you know what a subordinate clause is? It's a little piece of a sentence that's not a complete sentence. Like, although, if you start something with although, you're starting with a subordinate clause. Although I like pizza, can I stop right there? No, I haven't made a point yet. So how would I finish that? I'll puke if I eat one more piece. Okay, so that's having a subordinate clause, which just adds some complexity to the sentence. So I think what they're getting at with this last bullet point is, show some context or where it fits, or a little bit of complexity or something, because you don't necessarily have to have supported clauses, although it can make it more interesting.
That was actually a question I had earlier. Should our claim contain the complexity we plan to address in the paper? Or should we introduce the complexity as we go, or should it be in the claim?
When you say complexity, do you kind of also mean the detail, like specifics?
Yeah, opposing views would be one. Like, should we say in the claim, although administrators think bullying is fine, parents think it's terrible? And obviously that's not a very good claim, but to bring opposing views both into the claim, or just make one claim and then later
disagree with it or something.
Right.
Either way could be fine. Either way could be just fine.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have multiple points pro and against, you could say they did. I would clarify that in the claim. They had some good logos and some bad logos. Something more specific than that. And then show the good ones and then show the bad ones. But if it's all good and then one bad, you could say overall. You could put a qualifier. Overall, they had, or generally they did a good job. But this. So yeah, you leave in a clue as to it. I think that would be good in general. Okay, so let's look at these. Teachers are posed with many problems today. Is that a good claim?
No.
Why not?
It's too general.
Too general, kind of obvious. It's okay. It's not horrible. You expect following that you're going to give some interesting facts, but it could certainly be more interesting than that. Give me an example of improving that.
Something like teachers' salary isn't enough to support, I don't know, something to do with their salary specifically.
Great.
So you could go almost anywhere with that, actually.
Yeah, we could append that on. We could say teachers today face problems from their salaries and living conditions, to the attitudes of students, to violence in the lunchroom, you know, add some more information to make it have some valuable info. Yeah, that would be good to add on. Okay, how about this? Polls show that today more minorities own businesses than ever before. Is that a good claim?
Not enough opinion in the claim.
Not enough opinion?
Polls show.
It's a claim of fact, right? It's just reporting.
Yeah, it's not,
Kind of thing. So,
it's not debatable.
okay, unless there are other polls that show otherwise or something like that, yeah.
It's true.
But
yeah, it's kind of just
He's
informational.
not stating that they're other polls. He's just saying
Yeah.
the general statement. Polls show today more minorities.
It's more like a
business than ever
support.
before.
So this would be a fine claim to put like in a newspaper article where you're just reporting information. But if you're going to get into a more complex, interesting paper, you could come up with a more interesting claim. I won't make you improve every single one. We must strive with every ounce of our national vigor to ensure that America has a bright future and that truth and justice will abide with us forever. Sorry, I didn't start crescendo soon enough. Is that a good claim?
That's a book-sized claim.
It's vacuous, it's all emotional, it doesn't say anything, right? It's just vigor, national vigor. It's like, how would you say that without any pathos?
Without striving for national vigor.
I mean,
Truth and
simplify that
justice.
way down to just the chorus. What, is that making any point?
No.
We must keep America true and free.
I don't even think it's saying that.
We must ensure America's bright future.
We must work for American values.
You must
work to
strive with,
maintain-
abide with us forever. Let's just try it.
Yeah, kind of stuff. Okay. Ophelia is my favorite character in Hamlet because she is the most interesting.
Too vague on the interesting. What about her makes her interesting?
Yeah. It's kind of vague, and yet, doesn't that sentence kind of promise you're going to talk about some interesting things? Kind of stuff. So, I mean, does that catch your interest at all? If you read that, would you read the next sentence?
Probably not. I'm not a big fan of Hamlet.
Okay. Although Ophelia really is fascinating with tons of very applicable modern applications.
Depends on how
I don't-
interesting Ophelia is, or I mean her, like she's saying it's her favorite, the author of the comment. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to get her take on it.
Yeah.
And see, for me, that was a total turn. I don't care what her favorite is.
Yeah?
If she said to me, Ophelia is a very interesting character and blah, 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 blah in Hamlet or something, I mean, if she took her my favorite out of this, I might be,
That would help
okay,
you.
well, why? I don't care if it's her favorite.
How about this? Say, Ophelia is the most interesting character in Hamlet, who also happens to have the most in common with modern teenage girls that every mother of a teenage girl should learn from.
I would read that article. I would keep going, but based on that.
Good, so it's more specific. I think you're right. It would be better. If we can put humans on the moon, we can find a cure for the common cold.
Illogical.
Yeah, logical fallacy.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? What does the moon have to do with the cold? It's cold up there, but it's also really hot. I don't know.
From the Onion,
We already
maybe?
did.
Yeah, it'd be great on the onion. I guess.
That leaves us with the next one being the right one.
Though they seem mere entertainment, Hollywood movies are actually responsible for reinforcing cultural stereotypes in America.
It's debatable.
It's debatable. It adds an interesting idea. It's not super vague.
It's like the subordinate clause.
Yep, it's hypotactic. Yeah, I can't remember that word. Good. Okay, let's
So
go
is there a
on.
hypertactic?
I am sure there is. And if anyone can do it, I bet you could. I'm not saying that as a challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll see. You'll probably do it anyway.
We'll see.
Okay, so data here
Yeah.
is the word they use. Like, see how I use the word support instead of evidence? Because, like, evidence is like proof and stats, whatever, but support is maybe just a story to kind of help you get it. They use the word data instead of evidence for their thing. Anyway, definition: the evidence which you cite to support your claim. Like a lawyer presenting evidence to a jury, we must support your claim with facts. An unsupported claim is merely an assertion. Data can include facts or stats objectively determined about your data or topic. No, just what can constitutes objective, may be open to debate. Expert opinion, so appeal to authority, the media, well, not so much anymore. And our essays are full of learned opinions, which you should cite frequently, both to support your argument and to disagree with it. Why should you undermine your own argument?
Makes it stronger.
Why does it make it stronger?
Because it shows you're not biased to your own opinion.
Well,
Yeah, you're making it more complete.
If you can support your own claim and then present an argument and then beat it down, use a straw man technique, it makes you awesome. And not
Or maybe not straw man, but like
like a real one. Oh
yeah.
Using a straw man tactic does not make your does not make your argument better.
Oh yeah, well there's
I've
no
already
pizza
known
over
a lot of
there.
people that totally work on their side.
Authors must be quoted and properly cited in your paper. Okay, personal anecdotes. So there's your
example anecdote.
Yeah, right there. The most difficult kind of data to use well. For doing so requires a persuasive argument that your own experience is objectively grasped and generalizable. Personal experience can, however, help bring an argument to life, which is just what you guys said when we brought that up. So there's your different kinds of evidence support. And the warrant. Here's the one that's hardest to understand, as you will discover again when you go to write your own warrants. Definition: the warrant interprets the data and shows how it supports your claim. And remember, you can use a warrant to interpret the same data in different ways, like we did with the president is the best or the worst example. The warrant, in other words, explains why the data proves the claim. In trials, lawyers for opposing sides often agree with the data, but hotly dispute the warrants. And a defense attorney's failure to offer strong warrants may result in a warrant for the defendant's arrest. A philosopher would say that the warrant helps to answer the question, what else must be true for this proposition to hold? A good warrant will be a reasonable interpretation of facts. A good warrant will not make logical or interpretive leaps. A good warrant will not assume more than the evidence supports, like if we can go to the moon, we can cure the common cold. A good warrant may consider and respond to possible counter-arguments. And sometimes when you write the warrant, it sounds like you're just restating the claim, sort of. And if you really want to understand arguments really well, Google Tollman, T-O-U-L-M-A-N. He gave even more definitive. I didn't want to make you memorize the whole thing, but it's fairly interesting. It's valuable. It might be helpful. It's like different types of these three things that we've gone over. So let's practice, because there's some good examples here that will help you understand warrant a little bit. Find warrants which will interpret the data to support the claim in the following passages. Claim: President Clinton should be applauded for his policies on minority-owned businesses. Support: the New York Times reports that more minorities own businesses than ever before. So, explain to me how that New York Times info means that Clinton should be applauded.
The policies that President Clinton instituted have had a direct effect on the number of businesses that are owned today by minorities.
Good, because if Clinton didn't cause more minority-owned businesses, then they'd be unrelated. So you need to explain that connection. Good. Any American can grow up to be president. Support: Bill Clinton came from a poor town in a poor state to be president. What's the connection between that?
Even poor people can be the president.
And if poor people can, then anybody can, because poor people are the worst. Is that what they're implying? That's kind of what they're implying, right?
Well, I think they're actually implying that most presidents have been rich white men.
Yeah,
right.
With the benefits of education,
with benefits of
connections,
education. Well, yeah,
aspirations,
with the benefits that all that implies.
Yeah.
And Bill Clinton was a president who did not have all those benefits. He came from a poor town in a poor state, from a single parent.
Just like Carter. Yeah.
Well, Carter was a wealthy person in a poor town because he had a peanut monopoly, right?
Yeah.
So
I didn't know how extensive that was.
So yeah,
he taught us it was all about the nuts.
But his family had a peanut farm. Those
So
The
you
government
could say
actually
he
limits
was a
the number.
farmer, but he was
No,
still.
well, he benefited from the monopoly of being able to grow peanuts,
Okay.
which the government decided that they wanted to promote peanut farmers, and so they limited them who could grow peanuts. His
To drive
family
prices up.
benefited from that monopoly, and so, and so
Okay.
he did not have the same background that Lincoln had.
Yeah. So when you guys do your warrant, like the first half of this was excellent development of warrant, and the second half, you don't have to go in that much detail if you want, but that was great. What's your background that you know all that anyway?
I'm a
Just
history major.
History, okay.
I would never do history, there's no future in it.
Yes, there is. It just becomes.
It's just not as bright as.
No,
say-
there's just no future in it, it's.
Yeah, we get you. The school system itself promotes racial tension in its effort to provide America's children with a good education.
My dad's a history major, and he's an executive for Movies, so
Yep, so it wasn't due to history.
the degree helps.
So where were we?
I was just saying, I think where we're at is you're all tired of doing claims, evidence, or.
No, it just, we got off track.
Can I do this last one then? Okay, we'll do it. The school system itself promotes racial tension in its efforts to provide America's children with a good education. Proof. There's a lot of racial tension in many schools these days. Give me the shortest warrant you can that connects those two. Shortest sentence you can. The school system promotes racial tension. There's a lot of tension in school. Give me the shortest warrant you can to tie them together.
Had schools not promoted racial tension, there'd be less like racial tension in schools today.
Okay, that was pretty good. Or if you took that same idea and made it even shorter, it'd be like, so the schools must have done it, right? Okay, would that be a good warrant?
I don't understand it at all.
Okay, so they're saying the schools promote racial tension. Our proof is there's tension in the schools. And so if I just say, so the schools must have done it, that's a super short warrant, but it's not very convincing, is it?
No.
So for a good warrant, you need to explain, you have to provide a lot more data too to.
Yeah.